The main dude of this story was Kim Jin, 30 years old, dead serious, but kinda lost in life. He'd been grinding for 7 years straight, trying to pass the civil service exam. His whole youth burned away in libraries and cheap coffee. Kim was just your regular guy. No magic, no powers, no flashy gamer skills. A few Kim once dreamed of being one of them. A player who could crush monsters and make headlines. But reality hit hard. No talent, no awakening, no miracle. So now all he could dream about was passing that damn exam. One day, while he was eating lunch alone, he overheard two guys talking about some viral video. They were hyped about a dude who fought like a beast. His moves were insane. They called him the Dead Genius, a nickname that burned like salt on a wound. His talents had been discovered too late. By the time they ran the extra tests, the talent panels were already closed. No way to activate what was buried inside. Kim had one fleeting chance to flip his destiny. Normally, those panels shut down before you hit 20, and his did. His future got locked away before it even began. Kim kept quiet but heard every word. He knew the truth better than anyone. His shot at becoming a player was long gone. 7 years ago, he gave it one last go, retaking the test as a desperate gamble. It was a government-run screening program meant to detect hidden player traits, like a last-ditch hope for the untalented. The test measured potential and revealed any active talents you had. But for Kim, the results were worse than nothing. Not only did he lack talent, his stats basically mocked him. Even the head of the Player Association's HR department came personally to hand him the results. That's how bad they were. Kim barely scraped through high school. He wasn't great at anything. Not smart enough, not strong enough, just painfully average. Life for talented players was a whole different universe. Fame, wealth, power. For people like him, just endless grind. Hoping after lunch, Kim went home, shoved his disappointment down, and hit the books again. That night, he rewatched documentaries about the chaos in Seoul when the gates first appeared. The story was narrated by Ma San, one of the first great players, a guy who turned disaster into his legend. Ma San always preached that effort beat talent, claiming he was living proof. Kim scoffed. To him, that talk was garbage, just fairy tales for people born lucky. He didn't want to dwell on things he couldn't change. Deep down, though, he believed that if he had any kind of gift, he'd have awakened long ago. The thought haunted him, that everything wrong in his life was his own fault. His mom had died from illness. His older sister had worked herself sick in a semiconductor factory and ended up with leukemia. Kim needed to succeed, not for himself, but for them. Yet no matter how hard he tried, nothing ever worked out. He couldn't shake off the words from that conversation at lunch. He thought Kim doubted anything could change tomorrow, not even if he pushed himself harder. He felt like a ghost drifting through life, utterly alone. The next morning, Kim remembered there was a midterm evaluation that day. He shook off his gloom, took a quick shower, and headed to the academy. At the bus stop, he waited for his usual ride. Bus number 702, 2 minutes away. For some reason, a strange feeling crept up on him, like the air itself was off. As he stepped onto the bus, the whole day felt different, almost unreal. Maybe it was just his mood messing with him, he thought. Sitting down, he pulled out his notebook to review one last time. Yesterday, he'd stopped right on the chapter about the cataclysms. Flipping through his notes, he noticed something weird. For April, it was freezing cold outside. Then he heard passengers murmuring about a fog outside, thick, heavy, and rolling in fast. A foul stench hit his nose, sharp and wrong. He grabbed his phone. An emergency alert flashed on the screen. The warning read, April 27, 2018. A dense, unidentified fog has descended upon Seoul. Kim froze in disbelief. The world around him twisted like a nightmare in reverse. And when the haze cleared, He realized he'd gone back 10 years in time. The whole district was choking on that foul stench, wrapped in a heavy, eerie fog that seemed alive. Kim's blood ran cold. He remembered the history books. 145,000 people were about to die. But this time, he knew. He knew what was coming. He'd seen the future once, and fate had just given him a rewind. Then chaos erupted. From every alley, from every shadow, goblins crawled out, their shrieks tearing through the smog. Suddenly, right before him, a glowing vial appeared out of thin air, a potion filled with wild golden energy, the elixir of the brave Lion King, a relic that could boost strength by 6 full points, a god-tier starter item. Normally, a player only gained 2 stat points per level. This was straight up broken. The system's voice echoed in his head, declaring that the brave Lion King expected courage from him. He knew the goblin wave was seconds away. If he stayed calm and didn't act stupid, he might actually survive. Then, the air cracked and a shadowed figure appeared before him. A watcher from beyond the system. The figure read the petition. The brave Lion King requested changes to the tutorial settings. The brave Lion King was infamous for forcing twisted ideals of courage and reckless passion on players. Kim knew the stories. This so-called lion was a sadistic maniac who enjoyed watching mortals suffer. Knowing his cruel nature, Kim realized what was coming. The bastard wanted to remove the safe zone. Kim clenched his fists. He wasn't about to accept a death sentence disguised as a lesson. The Lion King had no right to break the rules, especially when a human life was at stake. The mysterious observer seemed intrigued by his defiance. Kim pointed out that his first 10 seconds were stolen while trapped in the so-called safe zone. He demanded compensation. Talking with that entity had bought him just enough time to survive the first wave. From that moment, Kim decided, no more hesitation. His mission now was simple: survive at all costs. The tutorial wasn't a lesson. It was pure hell disguised as training, a full week of it. As the bus doors creaked open, Kim stepped out, his breath misting in the cold air. Food and water. That was his priority. There was a small grocery store nearby. That would be his first checkpoint. He figured other survivors must be around, but the fog made it almost impossible to see beyond a few feet. Then he saw it. A little girl trapped under a crushed car reaching toward him. A goblin clung to her from the other side, claws digging into the metal. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto his, silently begging him to save her. The system whispered a warning. This goblin was a juvenile, but even so, at level 1, it was a brutal opponent. Kim didn't hesitate this time. He opened his inventory and equipped what little he had. He remembered every rule of the tutorial, every trap, every condition. Knowledge was his only weapon. Moving low and silent, he circled behind the goblin and struck first. The blow landed clean. The goblin child screeched once before collapsing. The system chimed. EXP gained. Kim lifted the girl to her feet and told her to stay close. No time for fear now. Together, they headed toward the grocery store, their temporary shelter. The system's voice echoed again, colder this time. The second wave was coming. That's when Kim realized. The girl wasn't an ordinary survivor. She was a player, one with a rare innate talent. Talented players could sense where the safe zones were, and she was heading toward one. According to the system, safe zones included schools, convenience stores, and hospitals. Outside, goblins were rampaging, slaughtering anyone who couldn't fight back. Knowing that the convenience store was one of those safe zones, panicked survivors were already rushing that way. Kim watched in silence as desperate people pounded on the doors, begging to be let inside. But no matter how much they screamed, the barrier wouldn't break. The safe zone could not be forced open by brute strength. The catch was brutal. If he opened those doors from the inside, the safe zone would shatter like glass under pressure. He and the girl both knew that one wrong move could erase them in an instant. So he just stood there, dead silent, eyes fixed on the horror outside, watching the lives of others fade into nothingness. Kim swore in his heart that someday, every piece of this damn system would burn for what it had done. 6 long hours passed after the second goblin assault, and silence finally settled like ash after a firestorm. The girl, she called herself Khan, just 14 years old, too young for a world this cruel. Her voice trembled with sincere thanks, a spark of innocence in a ruined city. But Kim couldn't promise her safety till the end. In this game, promises got people killed. Still, he decided not to push her away, not yet, unless her presence threatened his own survival. The next day, he told her they had to reach the tower. That was their next checkpoint in this hellish tutorial. When morning came, they stepped out of the store and were greeted by a graveyard of corpses. Even for a hardened survivor, it was chilling. For Can, it was pure nightmare fuel. The city looked like the end of the world itself. Blood on the walls, silence in the air, no survivors in sight. Every step forward demanded focus. One wrong move could mean death. Kim warned her to tell him immediately if she saw anything that looked slimy. The slime was a neutral monster, harmless at first glance, its level hidden. It was the safest kind of prey, something even a child could take down. Kim wasted no time. He cut through it in one clean motion, earning his first bit of experience. He explained to Khan that whenever a slime crossed their path, they'd take it down for steady growth. The moment he spotted one, he struck fast, precise, and ruthless. His body pulsed with light as his level rose, power flowing through his veins like electricity. Can watched, realizing that each monster he killed made him stronger, faster than she could have imagined. The hero cut down slime after slime with his blade, moving like a seasoned fighter in training. With every swing, his level climbed, and extra stat bonuses stacked up like destiny calling his name. He remembered the Fist King, a legend from old records who'd once endured the same deadly training. Bonus points existed, but even the Fist King had struggled to earn them. Kim knew he was lucky, or cursed. He recalled his own retest, the one that had branded him talentless. Maybe he was one of those players who shine bright only in the beginning, a flare before the fall. Yet hope burned quietly within him, that somehow this nightmare would lead to his ultimate goal. He had to survive, not for glory, but to earn enough money to save his mother. Along the road to the tower, they kept cutting through slimes like a storm sweeping leaves. That's when he uncovered another secret of the system. Without hesitation, Kim invited Khan into his group, their fates now linked by data and blood. But near the tower, danger awaited. A lurking beast stood in their path. As they approached, a fox-like creature appeared, eyes glinting with eerie calm. It looked neutral, but Kim sensed something off. A hidden passive skill beneath that soft fur. Can wanted to sneak past quietly, praying it wouldn't notice them. But fate had other plans. A whole pack of foxes lunged from the shadows, snarling. Kim moved instantly, shielding the girl, slicing through the ambush with every ounce of strength. All the while, an invisible administrator watched, unseen and silent, observing his every move. Kim reached level 8, an impossible pace for a newcomer. Even Kim himself felt strange. The growth rate was unreal, like something inside him had awakened. His evolution was unnatural, but full of limitless potential, a storm waiting to be unleashed. Kim laid out his plan to the girl, a strategy forged from experience and survival instinct. If she wanted to live through this madness, she had to follow his commands without hesitation. To prepare her for the bloodshed ahead, he handed her his old iron gauntlets, worn, heavy, but reliable. Entry into the tower's dungeon required at least level 5, a barrier for the unprepared. Using his growing strength, Kim guided them through the gate and down into the underground of the tower. Inside, the air was thick with danger. Goblins snarled in the dark, and foxes watched from the shadows. Kim told the girl to stick to the plan. Start with the goblins and keep her guard tight. Unlike high-tier dungeons, this one was chaotic. Bloodthirsty goblins and neutral foxes sharing the same cursed space. He was impressed by the girl's precision, her movements sharper than he'd expected. The goblin attacks barely scratched her. Her defense was holding perfectly. She exceeded every expectation, proving she wasn't just dead weight. Seeing her exhaustion after the wave of kills, Kim told her to rest. The calm before the storm. The first floor was cleared, which meant one thing: the mini-boss would appear soon. While she continued to finish off the remaining foxes, Kim's focus sharpened. Then, everything froze. The system triggered a pause effect, halting the flow of battle. The administrator, hidden within the code, was irritated by Kim's behavior. He was acting too confident, as if he already knew every twist in the story. The unseen observer judged his actions as reckless, borderline suicidal. After all, the upcoming mini-boss was no joke. A goblin soldier, level 13. The admin sent a silent warning. This one's stats were boosted, way beyond standard scaling. She believed Kim was punching way above his weight class. This was a fight he couldn't possibly win. In her eyes, starting this battle was breaking every survival rule in the book. That's when Kim realized he had become a spectacle, a player that drew eyes from beyond the system. He was no longer just a participant. He was entertainment, a rare anomaly in the eyes of the watchers. His survival now served the admin's interests, a tool, not a threat. Kim knew the truth, though. That female administrator was incompetent, destined to be erased in the future. She couldn't control the narrative. She was just reacting to it. Kim decided he would challenge the goblin soldier anyway, no matter the odds. Administrator Celine doubted his strength, whispering in the void of the system. The hero countered her disbelief with an offer, a deal that could turn the tide. Celine thought his arrogance had gone too far, that he was taunting the very structure of fate. Yet curiosity got the better of her. She wanted to know the terms of his deal. Meanwhile, every remaining monster on the floor had been wiped out. The system's tone shifted. The goblin soldier had spawned. Kim hadn't expected the creature to be that massive. It towered over him, armored and roaring. He knew the key to victory lay in dodging its deadliest skill. A single spear throw that could erase anyone in one hit. He and Khan took cover behind a broken ATM, the tension heavy in the air. Then the fight began, metal clashing, ground trembling under every strike. Kim declared through his resolve that everyone should watch closely as a level 8 player took down a boss. He anticipated the monster's pattern. After the lethal spear throw, it would immediately rush the survivors. The heroes read its movements like an open book, syncing perfectly under pressure. Kim unleashed every ounce of strength he had, striking with precision and fury. Meanwhile, Khan fought off the smaller mobs, keeping their flank clear. The hidden observer was stunned by the raw power Kim displayed. She hadn't expected this kind of combat prowess from someone still at level 8. His movements were different, not random like most players, but calculated, efficient, almost professional. Yet even she thought that no matter how skilled he was, the goblin soldier was beyond his reach. But then, the glow returned. His level rose once more, reaching 9 in the heat of battle. The system flashed a notification. The durability of his iron sword was dropping fast. Leveling up didn't just give stat points. It restored his health, surging through his veins like pure adrenaline. Kim had learned to exploit that mechanic, using the low-level dungeon and rapid XP gains to his advantage. The goblin soldier refused to back off, hammering him with relentless strikes that shook the ground. But every hit only fueled Kim further. His level rose again, breaking into double digits. The hero stood firm, tanking the monster's blows with grit that bordered on madness. With perfect timing, he spun around and drove his sword straight into the creature's back. The system flared with recognition, announcing Kim's victory over the goblin soldier. He was the first. No one else had managed to bring that beast down. His triumph was marked as a solo clear, a feat reserved for legends. Kan ran to him, throwing her arms around his tired body, overwhelmed by relief and admiration. One of the hidden achievement conditions had been fulfilled. Meanwhile, in the Quan district, a whole pack of foxes was on the rampage. People watched in disbelief as another player cut through them with a single devastating strike. That man was Su Hyun, the strongest trainee in the entire zone, a living powerhouse. Kim and Kan decided to keep moving, pushing deeper toward their next objective. Survivors they passed invited them to join their camp, seeking protection and leadership. Yet a thought kept gnawing at Kim. Could it really be true that he had no talent? The unseen observer was amazed by his unwavering focus amid chaos. She was one of the guardians, a being whose nature leaned toward pure good. Unlike the Lion King, she valued the safety of players, guiding and supporting them from the shadows. Kim couldn't understand why such a righteous entity would notice him of all people. The reward materialized, a new iron sword, standard grade but freshly forged. After regrouping, they set their sights on Chogan, their next battleground. Their mission there: eliminate the city wolves that prowled its ruins. Clearing even one dungeon floor shifted the balance of the entire training zone, and they had conquered the first. Kim was now certain he did have talent, enough to earn the money he needed to save his family. He swore to seize every opportunity, no matter how dangerous. Su approached him later, curious how Kim and Kan had managed to survive this long. The hero recognized him instantly. It was Su, the King of Fists himself, a living legend in the training fields. Su offered him a place in his group, believing strength lay in unity. Together, he said, their odds of survival would skyrocket. But Kim refused the offer without hesitation. He believed they could endure the 7 days on their own. No alliances, no safety nets. Su's friends didn't take that well. They glared, irritated by Kim's defiance. Before leaving, Kim advised Su to aim for a monster's left eye when things got tough. Su didn't fully grasp the meaning, but he thanked Kim anyway, taking the advice to heart. Kim knew what was coming. Su and his crew would soon enter the tower's dungeon. They'd clear the first floor, but only Su would walk out alive. History would remember him as the hero of the training grounds, the first human to defend a dungeon. Yet Kim also knew that Su's decision to challenge the second floor would become his greatest mistake. Kan suddenly sensed monsters ahead, their bloodlust cutting through the still air. Without hesitation, the two launched themselves into the fight. His power exploded past the limit. He became the first to reach level 11. The system crowned him with a new title, the Trailblazer. It was a sacred name, reserved for those who dared to carve paths where no one else had ever stood. After wrapping up the fight, they didn't waste time. The road ahead was still calling, and they kept moving forward through the ruined cityscape. The hospital ahead counted as a safe zone, one of the few remaining places untouched by chaos. The administrator's curiosity stirred. She wanted to know more about the title Kim had earned. But Kim refused to share that secret with Celine. Some things even allies didn't need to know. Meanwhile, the survivors gathered for an emergency meeting in what was left of a nearby plaza. He asked the group for their approval to mount a joint expedition inside. The people agreed without hesitation. Unity meant survival now. They believed that as long as they stayed together, they might just live through this nightmare. Plans for a full-scale raid began immediately. Everyone started preparing their weapons and supplies. During that time, Kim kept hunting down the city wolves without slowing down. Kan noticed how easily they dispatched them. Their progress was almost unreal. Now that Kim had reached level 12, his strikes were faster, sharper, deadlier. When he spotted the last wolf, he cut it down before it could even blink. The system pinged. All hidden figure conditions had been met. That could mean only one thing. The Wolf King was about to appear. Kim hadn't expected the boss to spawn here. Not this soon, not in this zone. He ordered Khan to take cover behind a car, his tone calm but urgent. He'd known hidden bosses existed in the tutorial, but he never imagined he'd actually face one. The power gap between them was massive, almost impossible to bridge. And by Kim quickly downed a strength elixir, forcing his shaking hands to steady. His muscles surged with power. 6 points added in an instant. The Wolf King lunged with terrifying speed, crashing into him like a freight train. Kim realized that killing such a monster head-on was out of the question. At his current level, his best option wasn't to fight, it was to survive. The only tool he had left was the blade-sharpening oil he'd been saving for emergencies. As the wolf pounced again, Kim spilled the oil right beneath its claws, turning the ground slick. The elixir's strength still burned in his veins, giving him one more shot. Using both agility and wits, he pivoted, shoving the beast into a nearby water channel. But the monster clawed its way back out, shaking off the splash like it was nothing. Kan gasped. The Wolf King's form had started to shrink. Water had always weakened their kind, stripping their power until they resembled ordinary wolves. The girl was stunned by the turn of the battle. This wasn't luck, it was pure instinct and brains. Kim closed the distance, his sword gleaming with the last of his strength. With one decisive strike, he brought the beast down. The system chimed again, level 13 unlocked. Defeating the hidden boss earned him a new title, Elite Hunter. The brave Lion King laughed somewhere beyond the screen, mocking Kim's dirty tactics. The administrator confirmed the data. Kim's current level had reached 15. She took the time to explain the concept of the item shop. Inside it, players could trade their hard-earned coins for powerful gear and rare supplies. The title Elite Hunter was special, available only in the tutorial zone, usable even against living beings. Kim and Khan advanced toward the second floor of the dungeon. Kim knew what awaited them. A creature far stronger than any goblin soldier. It was the same monster Su Hyun was battling inside the dungeon. Kim understood that one more strike would decide everything. Su, on the other side, was shocked that his powerful blow had done nothing. The monster hadn't even flinched. And then, in that split second, Su remembered Kim's words. The warning about the monster's left eye. The memory hit him. When facing a massive beast, the key was always the eyes. That was the weak spot. But before he could strike, the monster lunged first, moving with brutal, unnatural speed. Just then, the doors burst open. Kim and Khan stormed into the room like a surge of hope in a losing battle. Kim's gaze swept the area. The ground was covered with the wounded. They were barely clinging to life, but they were still breathing. Without hesitation, he pulled out a vial of weak healing potion from his inventory. One of the injured men tried to warn them, his voice trembling. That staying meant death, that the monster would kill them all. Kim handed the potion to Kan, instructing her to divide it among the wounded, even if it wasn't much. He ordered everyone to stay down, not to move. This fight was his alone. Then, tightening his grip on his sword, Kim stepped forward, ready to face the monster head-on. No one in that room knew the second-floor boss better than Kim did. These creatures were known for insane endurance and a pain threshold that bordered on immortality. The magical troll possessed both boss-level resistance and absurd durability against physical strikes. The only way to bring it down was through relentless, non-stop assault. No hesitation, no breaks. The beast roared, charging at Kim with enough force to shake the walls. Kan's eyes widened. She couldn't even read the monster's level. This was something completely beyond the usual enemies they had fought. The system's rule was clear. If a level didn't display, it meant the opponent was far beyond your reach. 10 levels apart, that was the gap between Kim and the creature. Beating it through brute force was impossible. Pure suicide. But since running wasn't an option, there was only one path left: fight smart or die trying. Kim coated his blade with sharpening oil, prepping it for both precision and power. The wolf-like troll launched its first attack, a lightning-fast leap straight toward his throat. Kim countered by gulping down another elixir, his body igniting with new strength. Power surged through his veins like fire, his movements sharper, faster, heavier. He knew the only real strategy: knock the creature into the water and let nature finish what he couldn't. Kan gasped as the beast began to shrink, its aura dimming. Water was their natural weakness. It stripped their resilience, drained their power until they were fragile. Curious and awestruck, Kan wondered where Kim had learned such unorthodox combat instincts. But Kim had never trained in real martial arts. He'd only studied enough to pass exams. His fighting style was pure adaptation, pure survival. He waded into the water, raising his sword high, channeling every ounce of strength left in his body. Driving the blade deep into the monster's chest, he ended the fight with a single decisive strike. The creature sank, lifeless, and Kim exhaled. The battle had ended faster than he'd expected. The monster had been so powerful that its defeat instantly boosted his level. The system rewarded him with the title Elite Hunter once again. Somewhere beyond the screen, an unseen observer watched in awe, impressed by his strategy, and decided to sponsor him. Looking up, Kim saw Selene appear before him again, her expression unreadable. Seeing his level jump, she decided to explain the mechanics of the item shop. Inside that digital space, players could trade coins for anything: potions, weapons, or rare relics. Since Kim was still in the tutorial zone, the shop's inventory was limited to beginner-level items. He figured that with his current funds, he could stock up on plenty of healing and buff potions. Kim had no interest in answering. That part of him stayed locked away. Instead, he turned his attention to the shop's interface, planning to test its options himself. The Elite Hunter title was unique, granted only within the tutorial and applicable even to living targets. Kim warned Khan that their next step was to head deeper. The second floor of the tower dungeon awaited. It was the same training dungeon where the goblin soldier had fallen, but this time, the danger would be far greater. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun was locked in his own desperate struggle against an unknown creature. He understood clearly. If he went down, it would all end right there. Gathering the last of his strength, he launched another strike, but his attack failed to even scratch the enemy. Soo couldn't believe it. After all those hits, the goblin hadn't taken a single point of damage. The guy knew one thing for sure: if he didn't act fast, he was toast. Death was literally breathing down his neck. Just then, Kim and Kang burst into the boss zone, their footsteps echoing like thunder. Without hesitation, the hero grabbed a weak healing potion. Low-tier stuff, but better than nothing. One of the survivors, trembling and pale, yelled that they had to get out before the monster wiped them all out. Kim handed the elixir to Kang, ordering her to split it among the wounded. Deep down, the guy knew. No one in this place understood the tower's second-floor boss better than he did. That monster was legendary for its insane endurance and freakish vitality. Kim's reflexes were razor-sharp. All those points he'd dumped into agility finally paid off. He could see the attack patterns and dodge like a ghost. The fatigue clawing at him could be cleansed by a potion he'd picked up from the shop earlier. He believed that if he played it smart, stayed cautious, and kept his head cool, He could take this thing down. So he decided it was going to be a battle of stamina. Whoever outlasted the other would win. None of the others watching even knew who this guy truly was. But they all stared, spellbound, as the fight dragged on for over an hour. Nobody could wrap their heads around the fact that a human could last that long against such a beast. One man whispered that Yu Hyun used to be called a genius. But Kim was on a whole other level. When Kim tested the troll's endurance firsthand, he realized just how brutal it really was. He'd been fighting non-stop for an hour, and that monster didn't even have a scratch. The hero knew that the old him, the average guy before all this, would have never jumped into such a deadly fight. But deep down, he'd always dreamed of the day when civil servant Kim would become a true player. Taking a deep breath, he focused. Judging by his instincts, there were maybe 15 minutes left till the end of the battle. Just then, the system chimed. The brave Lion King had decided to bless him. His next attack would deal double, no, massive, 100% boosted damage. The hit landed like a meteor, a double strike that shattered the air. At that point, damage numbers didn't even matter anymore. The entire strategy the hero had built fell apart the moment the Lion King interfered. One of the survivors stood frozen, unable to believe the guy had taken down the boss all on his own. Meanwhile, Sue, regaining consciousness, turned to Kang and asked what the hell had just happened. He could feel it. The monster's aura had completely changed. Something about it didn't feel right anymore. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow behind Kim loosed an arrow straight at the boss. The unknown archer gripped his bow tight, hoping that shot would finish the beast once and for all. Kim shouted for everyone nearby to run. Fast. He warned the stranger that if he stayed, there'd be no saving him. The guy blinked, totally confused. He couldn't understand what Kim meant. Then came the system alert. The magic troll had gone berserk. The boss entered berserker mode. Kim roared for everyone to get out. The boss zone itself was collapsing. He and Kang sprinted toward the excavation site. The tower's boss room could hold 15 people at once, but now it was turning into chaos. The unknown archer didn't make it out in time. The boss caught him. Kim and Kang bolted for the exit, trying to shake the monster off their trail. He realized there were no safe spots left in this dungeon. But then he remembered. There was one more safe place. The parking zone. So they decided to take the emergency stairs down to the second underground floor. The safe zone was located right there, on the second level of the parking area. When they opened the door, their blood ran cold. The troll was already there. The moment it spotted them, it charged with unstoppable fury. The heroes turned and dashed down the stairs, hearts pounding like war drums. As Kim tried to open the next door, the system screamed. Critical situation detected. The troll roared and lunged straight at Kim, its claws slicing through the air like blades. But Kang stepped in, her body glowing with defiance as she stood between him and death. She unleashed every ounce of strength she had, summoning her power to block the monster's crushing strike. In that instant, Kim realized she'd activated the Platinum Shield, a skill far beyond her usual level. When he turned toward her, his heart froze. Kang had collapsed, completely unconscious. The monster wasn't done. It raised its arm again, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Kim scooped Kang into his arms and bolted, pushing his body to its absolute limit. He knew he had to cross the danger line, the point of no return. Ahead of him shimmered a glass door, the only barrier between survival and annihilation. Without thinking twice, he lowered his shoulder and smashed through it. Beyond that threshold lay a secondary safe zone, one the troll couldn't step into. Only rare monsters could bypass a sanctuary's protection, and this one wasn't among them. Even in berserk mode, the creature couldn't break the invisible wall. Meanwhile, Kim tried desperately to bring Kang back to consciousness. Her arms were mangled and bruised, a clear price for her sacrifice. He didn't know when she'd managed to learn that new skill, but without it, they'd both be dead. Then he noticed something strange. The troll's body was dissolving, fading into ash. The magic troll had been slain. The system announced that the kill was credited to a player under level 20 who'd been closest to the monster. A second alert rang out. The training zone was collapsing after the boss's death. People in the city looked up, realizing the simulation was ending. On the second floor, only Yu Hyun had managed to survive. Kim called out to Selene, reminding her of the deal they'd made. He wanted to upgrade the item shop's rank. He needed better tools to save the girl. But Selene explained that the shop's rank could only rise sometime after the training phase was over. She didn't quite understand why he wanted such an exclusive contract in the first place. Still, the pact between player and administrator had been signed. From that moment, the Watchers could observe the player only through their assigned administrator. The more attention a player drew, the greater the rewards their administrator received. Kim figured he was probably infamous by now, the guy who attracted chaos wherever he went. That alone must have made him a hot asset. Purchasing an elixir, he gently poured it into Kang's mouth. He knew that without her, he would have been dead long ago. He owed her everything, his survival, his second chance, so he vowed to do whatever it took to bring her back. His efforts paid off. Her eyes fluttered open. Relief washed over him, a rare, genuine smile breaking across his face. Kang, still weak, couldn't understand why he'd saved her after saying he'd abandon her if she became a burden. Kim admitted that he just couldn't walk away and leave her behind. Tears welled up in Kang's eyes at those words, emotions breaking through her warrior's shell. Then the hero turned to Selene again, asking her to calculate the list of individual rewards. Smirking, he reminded her that they'd never actually finalized the shop rank upgrade. To confirm it in the system, they would have needed a signed document, and that never happened. Kim pointed out that it was the administrator's own fault for not preparing the contract properly. Suddenly, glancing at it, Kim's eyes widened. He'd hit the jackpot. The 7-day training had officially ended. The surviving players were rewarded according to their performance. Kim knew there was no way anyone could replicate his result without mastering the exact battle strategy. Because of his interference, the entire training sequence had shifted, and he hoped his reward would reflect that. When he opened his status window, he noticed 3 bonus stat points waiting for him. Selene announced that the top-tier hunter had leveled up his rank, a true upgrade worthy of attention. Even the title of Excellent Hunter was already a flex, but the bonus damage it added made his attack speed absolutely wild. He'd managed to complete conditions so brutal that most wouldn't even dare attempt them. No one had ever thought such an incredible title could even be earned in that zone. Yet even that glory couldn't compare to the final reward waiting for him. Kim had survived a deadly situation by trusting his sixth sense and fulfilled the conditions for fusion. Hardly any records existed about this technique, and the few that did were vague, almost useless. It was a rare enhancement method, barely known even among elite players. The fusion of the sixth sense which he had gained from the troll was now unlocked. He also had access to the Eye of the Cold-Blooded Observer, a rare relic from the beta test era. Plus, he still had the training bonus from his Excellent Hunter title, so he made the call to fuse the sixth sense with the Eye of the Cold-Blooded Observer. The instant he began, his heartbeat thundered like it was about to explode from his chest. The fusion process tore through his body with unbearable pain. If his willpower cracked even for a moment, he could have died right there. Kan had no idea what was happening to her friend. She could only watch in shock. The fusion succeeded, and Kim collapsed to the ground, his body drained of all energy. After some time, he woke up in bed, his vision hazy and mind spinning. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard an alarm blaring, distorted and unfamiliar. When he looked around, he saw a girl sitting beside him. It was his sister, staring at him with a mix of worry and disbelief. Kim couldn't make sense of what was going on. She asked where he'd been all this time. He'd gone off to training a week ago and vanished without a word. She was just relieved that her brother was safe and alive. That's when Kim realized he'd gone 10 years back into the past. His sister couldn't understand why he'd made everyone so anxious for his sake. Kim figured the fusion had ended the moment he'd lost consciousness. And in that void, he thought he heard his sister crying because of his cursed gift. He swore to himself he'd never make her cry again. At least now, she wouldn't have to break herself working in a factory just to survive. And maybe now he could finally help their mother too. He vowed to give everything he had, to change their fate. Just then, Khan burst into the room. She ran straight to him and wrapped him in a tight hug. And that's when it truly hit him. He had returned to the past. Those 7 days of training had been hell itself, a nightmare he'd never forget for the next 10 years. That inferno tested not just talent, but luck, endurance, and pure will. But even so, Kim was simply grateful. Grateful that he'd survived it. In the end, he had gained powers beyond anything he could have imagined. And this time, he swore he would change everything. A month passed since the great catastrophe that struck in Cheono. Out of 150,000 victims, only 5,000 had survived. That was when the strange phenomenon called the training appeared in Seoul. Countless people were left broken, haunted by the loss of their loved ones. On the anniversary of that tragic event, a news studio invited a special guest, Sue, the man who had endured the training, guiding and saving others even in the depths of hell. Rumor had it that he'd fought monsters bare-handed. The host even mentioned that he'd been awarded a title reserved only for those who'd survived the training. But when the young man humbly said that the true heroes were the people beside him, the room fell silent. The journalist smiled, believing he was just too modest to call himself a champion. Sue began recounting the story of a boy and a girl who had once been trapped underground during the training. He admitted that the male player had been far stronger than him, someone way out of his league. Deep down, Sue knew that without that guy's help, he wouldn't have made it out alive. Ever since then, he'd wanted nothing more than to repay that debt, to thank the one who saved his life. On July 7th, a small gate materialized near the second entrance of Seoul Station. People started panicking, convinced that monsters were about to pour out again. The gate could only be entered by 7 players, no more, no less. So Kim and Khan were the first to step forward, determined to face whatever was waiting inside. Kim already knew from the future that players would later come here to grind levels in the Coma timeline. If you knew the proper strategy for clearing it, this dungeon was actually way easier than the tower. Celine mentioned that the manual specifically stated the dungeon required a minimum of 7 people to enter safely. Going in with just 2 players was practically suicide. The system administrator warned them to retreat and come back only as a full group. But Kim refused. He wanted to show what he was truly capable of. The world had already changed. Weak monsters like slimes were now crawling around even outside of dungeons. People were terrified and started considering fleeing the city altogether. Sue, too, made his choice. He would take on the training again. The mid-rank administrator, Neptune, had personally offered him that challenge. When Neptune heard that 2 people had already entered the gate, he told Sue to find 4 more and join them. Inside the dungeon, Kim warned Khan to watch her step. Traps could be anywhere. The underground labyrinth beneath Seoul Station felt like a cold, damp cave straight out of a nightmare. Suddenly, Kim's eye of perception activated on its own, heightening his senses. By then, Khan had already reached level 5. Her aura pulsed with newfound confidence. Without warning, the path split in front of them. They had reached the fabled crossroad of 7 routes. Each of those 7 paths led to a separate cavern, each hiding a unique treasure. That's why the dungeon recommended a party of at least 7 adventurers. When a player stepped onto each magic circle, a trial for 7 players above level 10 was triggered. No matter which path was chosen, the chance of dying inside was sky high. Kim told Khan to stay behind and record everything for later study. He quickly realized that the first route was the Path of Nephirus, and the moment he stepped near, it activated. With no hesitation, Kim decided to begin the dungeon challenge right then and there. The Soul Station dungeon was built around the 7 branching paths of fate. Every single path had to be cleared before the dungeon itself could be completed. Each route offered its own type of reward, strength, skill, or rare loot. Kim knew that by tackling the first path with only Khan, they were essentially taking on a challenge meant for 7 full players. The strategy for this dungeon was well documented since it was one of the earliest ones to ever open. After finishing the first, Kim advanced toward the second path, his steps echoing in the darkness. He understood how to use the activation system. Each path's start point set the difficulty level, and here, all 7 paths were locked at a challenge rating for 7 players. Still, the young man pressed forward and managed to activate the third path with ease. The rules didn't require clearing all the paths simultaneously, which played perfectly to his advantage. Meanwhile, outside Seoul Station, officials were assessing the strange phenomenon. Residents were urged to evacuate immediately, fearing another outbreak. A boy standing in the crowd realized that the dungeon gate lay hidden right beneath their feet. Another young man rose above the crowd, his voice booming as he protested the chaos. Police tried to restrain him, but he was far too powerful. Sue recognized him instantly. It was the mid-rank administrator, Chris. The officers fired at Chris in desperation, but their bullets shattered harmlessly mid-air. The administrator was surrounded by a protective barrier, a shimmering shield that marked him as someone far beyond human. With a single fiery strike, Chris unleashed hell upon the police, flames bursting through the air as officers were thrown back like rag dolls. To him, humans were nothing more than noisy insects, always buzzing, always in the way. Drunk on his own power, Chris decided it was time to turn this chaos into a game, one where players were his pawns. As he turned his head, his gaze locked onto a boy standing in the crowd, someone who didn't flinch even in the face of his fury. Another player appeared beside him, a man named So, his presence calm but dangerous. Kim recognized him immediately, the same fighter he'd seen during the Goblin raid. Back then, while others ran in terror, So had reveled in the slaughter, dancing through the blood-soaked battlefield with a smile that sent chills down spines. Now, So and his group had decided to tackle the Soul Station dungeon as well. To him, this dungeon wasn't a threat. It was an opportunity, a golden door to power that others couldn't even dream of. He believed missing this chance would be an unforgivable mistake. So made up his mind to invite Kim into their party, knowing his strength could turn the tide. Meanwhile, deep inside the dungeon, Kim was already locked in combat with a massive black bull on the first path. Determined to clear it quickly, he focused all his energy into a decisive strike. The beast roared once before collapsing. Kim had slain the black yak effortlessly. The system chimed, rewarding him with a surge of experience points. By the end of the battle, 30 monsters had fallen to his blade. Kan watched in awe, completely captivated by the way he fought. Every movement sharp, deliberate, lethal. She had fought alongside other players before, but never had she witnessed technique like his. Kim told her to keep practicing, that one day, if she stayed relentless, she'd reach the same level. To him, training wasn't about comfort. It was about pushing until there was nothing left to give, like you were fighting the world itself. Kan didn't fully understand his words, but in her heart, she knew they carried truth. When she lifted her head, her eyes caught a faint glimmer, a ring hovering just above a pedestal. Kim had been expecting it. His instincts told him this was their reward. With that, they completed the first path. A flawless victory. Without resting, the two headed straight toward the second round. At the same time, another group of players approached the dungeon entrance. They were discussing how different this dungeon felt compared to the tower. Darker, heavier, more alive? Sue remembered the last dungeon too well. 10 players had died there, and even he hadn't been strong enough to defeat the monster. The memory still burned in his mind, a scar carved by failure. This time, they vowed to move forward, to clear everything in their path without hesitation. As they advanced, multiple tunnels stretched before them like veins branching into the earth. So took the lead, suggesting they check the nearest path first. Meanwhile, Kim and Khan discovered a pendant deep within the second tunnel. The system identified it as the Pendant of Dugo, a rare and valuable relic. Together, they continued toward the third path, determination burning brighter than ever. Yet Kan couldn't shake the feeling that she was too slow, too weak. While she struggled with one monster, Kim had already cut down several. Watching him, she realized he was strong enough to face everything alone. A pang of guilt struck her. She thought she was only slowing him down. But Kim disagreed, his eyes firm with unspoken conviction. And so, side by side, they pressed onward to the third path. There, new monsters emerged from the darkness, their growls echoing through the cavern. Suddenly, something struck Khan in the head, a sharp, solid object. Looking down, she saw it was a horn, still warm and dripping with energy. Kim told her to take on the bulls herself. It was her fight to win. With a deep breath, Khan stepped forward, raising her shield as the bulls charged. Kim called out that the creature couldn't truly harm her, not if she believed in her defense. Hearing that, she activated her provocation skill, drawing the monster's attention. The moment they struck, she countered perfectly, sending the bulls staggering backward. The purple beck howled one final time before both its horns shattered. And with that, it crumbled into dust. Defeated. The system chimed in, announcing the appearance of the Duranchi bracelet, another rare drop flashing into existence like a prize meant only for the bold. Their mission wasn't about wiping out every monster in sight. It was all about collecting the right loot that held real value in this deadly dungeon. After all, other players could still make their way inside at any moment, and competition here was ruthless. If they hesitated, they'd fall behind and lose precious time catching up. That's exactly what the guys were focused on, keeping their pace sharp and their goals even sharper. Sue couldn't shake the thought that nothing worthwhile had dropped for them yet. No rare items, no jackpot moments. It was bizarre. Even after taking down those massive bulls, their reward counter stayed empty, like the system itself was mocking them. So, without wasting time, they decided to move toward the Dugo path. As soon as they crossed onto the second path, they stumbled upon corpses of slain bulls, all missing their horns. So figured someone had beaten them to it, clearing the way and snagging the rewards. But that made no sense. They were supposed to be the only group entering after Chris had cleaned the route earlier. That realization didn't sit well with him at all. Something about it felt off, maybe even dangerous. He suggested they quickly deal with the remaining bulls and switch to a different path before things got messier. So, and the others silently agreed, each lost in their own uneasy thoughts about what might be waiting ahead. Meanwhile, Kim and Khan had already reached the sixth junction, the so-called Path of Victory. There, another burst of experience points hit them like a surge of raw energy. The system then announced the acquisition of Victoria's Shield, a legendary defense item radiating with divine light. Kim hoped to hand that key item over to his partner. It felt like something meant for her. Their collection was shaping up nicely. Athena's pendant, Zenith's staff, and now Victoria's shield. All that remained was the final key item from the last path, the piece that would complete their set. So they pressed forward, ready to face whatever came next. When Khan looked up, she noticed a group of players approaching from ahead. Kim had known they'd be caught up eventually, but it happened later than he'd expected. The hero quickly realized these were the players who had entered after them, and the moment he spotted Sue among them, he understood. The guy had ties to this group. Sue himself didn't expect to see Kim either. The tension in the air was palpable. So asked if they were the ones who'd taken down the monsters on the previous paths. Because Kim had traveled 10 years back in time, everyone looked so much younger, unfamiliar yet hauntingly recognizable. But he already knew where this was heading. This group would later evolve into the dark organization known as Terror. They would become the army of the Demon King himself. Their power was enough to rival even the legendary 8 heroes. The chaos and cruelty they unleashed would stain history itself. So had already begun to see himself as their leader, infamous for his ruthless nature and ambition. Kim had expected to encounter one of them someday, but not this soon, not here. The group had been observing Kim's moves closely, studying how the hero fought. They figured there was no way he and Khan could have cleared the dungeon alone, so made his move, suggesting they team up to clear the dungeon faster. He argued it'd be safer and way more efficient that way. Plus, they could always split the loot evenly once it was over. Since the dungeon technically belonged to no one, he assumed it was a fair deal. Kim agreed, but only under one condition. The key item from the 7th path would belong solely to him. Together, they stepped onto the 7th road, the path of Lakitul. Their teamwork boosted their speed dramatically, but Khan couldn't shake a feeling of dread creeping up her spine. Kim wasn't moving with his usual precision. His swings were slower, his breathing heavier. He'd handled things effortlessly before, but now he looked like a man running on fumes. So's curiosity spiked. He wanted to know what Ace Kim had up his sleeve to clear the earlier paths so fast. The system then notified them of a new drop, the Lakitul earrings. So examined them, unable to see what made them so special. To him, they just looked like a pair of old dusty earrings. And he couldn't help but wonder why Kim wanted them so badly. Those earrings were essential for completing the hidden trial, the one granted only to the very first players who dared to enter the dungeon. Since Kim had already gathered 7 key relics, he was finally eligible to take on the challenge. Without hesitation, he transferred the promised payment for the earrings, sealing the deal. So decided to help him finish the dungeon and complete his quest. Though his motives were far from pure, he ordered his group to follow his lead, masking his ambition behind a confident grin. Kan couldn't help but ask if Kim was all right. He looked utterly drained, his energy flickering like a dying flame. Through the eye of perception, Kim could see So's true colors, a swirling mass of deceit and malice. Instead of confronting him outright, the hero decided to wait, to see how long So could keep up the act before his rotten nature surfaced. Eventually, Kim reached the Mandra Plaza, a place steeped in mystery and silence. At that moment, the eyes of the massive stone statue of Mandra suddenly snapped open, glowing with an ancient light. The plaza only revealed itself once all 7 paths had been cleared, the final stage of the dungeon's grand design. Its name came from the fact that no one had ever figured out how to complete the Mandra statue's trial. As the group watched, the statue began to move, its stone lips shifting as if it were alive. It declared that only the worthy could remain in its presence. All others would be cast out. Kim hadn't come this far just to quit now. His heart blazed with determination. He was ready to prove exactly what he was capable of. The statue accepted his resolve and chose to put him to the test. The heroes would have to undergo a sacred trial to complete the dungeon's conquest. Failure meant annihilation, the destruction of one's very heart and soul. The first phase required him to offer up all 7 key relics in the precise order of the dungeon's paths. Without hesitation, Kim placed every treasured item before the statue. By doing so, he proved himself worthy in the eyes of the ancient guardian. The statue then asked for his name, the name of the one who had conquered its trial. In that instant, Kim recalled a video he'd once seen online. It had explained that the Mandra statue wasn't just a relic, it was the guardian of the ranch. It stood watch over the 7 pastures where the mighty bulls once roamed. The ranch's master had hidden something deep within this dungeon, a treasure sealed by time. According to legend, the dungeon held a secret reward, but to claim it, one had to conceal their true name. So Kim chose his words carefully, claiming to be the one who had given the statue new life. He called himself the rancher. The others stared in confusion, unable to comprehend what he was doing or why. The statue bowed its massive head, acknowledging the title with reverence. With that, Kim had completed the hidden quest, and he knew a rare reward awaited him. The group, meanwhile, couldn't understand why the ancient statue had bowed to him like that. Sue grew uneasy, fearing something had gone wrong, yet deep down, he sensed Kim was no ordinary player. The statue then revealed several relics before him, treasures of immense power and history. Kim was told to choose one among them. He stood there in thought, weighing the worth of each reward in silence, so couldn't resist making a comment about the prizes, his tone laced with fake amusement. Kim told him to wait, his focus unbroken. But inside, an unsettling feeling began to rise, a sense that danger was closing in. He instantly activated the eye of perception once again. So's lips twisted into a sinister grin. Kim felt the venom in his gaze, cold, sharp, and full of deceit. In that moment, So's true nature was fully exposed. Believing the hero couldn't see through him, Kim made his choice, the Mandra gauntlets. These gloves held divine resistance against poisons and offered powerful protection from infection and disease. The statue blessed his decision, hoping the artifact would serve him well in his coming battles. And with that, Kim completed the trial of Mandra Plaza, standing tall as its first true conqueror. Their mission was clear: find a way to cross the final intersection of Seoul Station. Kim and Kang stepped forward, heading straight toward the next challenge. So couldn't hide his frustration. Kim didn't even see them as a team, just pawns in his own game. Everything about the situation screamed one thing: Kim was calling the shots, and everyone else was expected to follow. So suggested they split into 2 squads to cover more ground. Kim figured he and the girl could handle one route on their own without breaking a sweat. To So, that sounded like pure arrogance. The guy was way too confident for his own good. He pointed out that Kim's overconfidence might give him an edge now, but it could easily lead to disaster later. Kim didn't argue. He actually agreed with So's reasoning. He asked what So thought would be the best move then. So said they needed to balance their groups carefully. His idea was to separate Kim and Kang, putting them in different teams for better coverage. Kim walked up to the girl, rested a hand on her shoulder and smiled, a quiet act of defiance. So couldn't wrap his head around Kim's decision. Kim wasn't about to waste time convincing anyone. His mind was made up. He said the girl was like a little sister to him, someone he couldn't just leave behind. So asked if they planned to stick together until the very end. He couldn't understand where Kim's unshakable confidence came from. In that case, So decided not to take Kang with him. He suggested that Sue team up with Kim instead. Kim didn't object to that arrangement. Sue agreed as well, calm and composed. They decided to regroup once both paths were cleared. After wishing each other luck, the group split up, heading in opposite directions. As Kim's group entered the first path, the system chimed in, announcing that a clue to clearing the dungeon awaited at the end of the road. Since fewer than 5 people had entered, a temporary safe zone was activated. Sue asked if Kim was the same person who'd shown up on the 2nd floor of the tower, the one who took down the troll. Kim didn't get why he suddenly brought that up. Lowering his head, Sue thanked Kim for saving him that day. Then, lifting his gaze, he added that Kim was his hero. Sue asked if he could repay that debt somehow. It was clear to everyone that his gratitude came from the heart. The three of them continued forward together, deeper into the unknown. Up ahead, they spotted the dungeon's clear crystal, glowing faintly in the distance. Kim had expected as much. The crystal was still intact. He told his companions to take a seat and rest up. The next phase was going to be brutal, and they'd need every ounce of energy. Since the safe zone was still active, they could relax wherever they wanted for now. Sue suggested they deal with the crystal later, after they'd recovered a bit. They all agreed. It was better to save their strength for the real fight. Kim still wasn't used to hearing Sue call him by his name, Hyun. Sue, on the other hand, couldn't figure out why breaking a crystal could be so exhausting. But the truth was, clearing that crystal was directly linked to purging the entire dungeon. Since this was the final battle, a trap waiting ahead wasn't just possible, it was almost guaranteed. Several potential problems loomed on the horizon. Then came the system alert. New players had entered the area. With more than 5 participants now inside, the safe zone's barrier began to fade away. Kim calmly announced that it was time to fight those guys head-on. So grinned and asked why they still hadn't cleared that path yet. He'd expected Kim to crush it way faster, given how damn confident the guy always acted. Kim stood his ground, waiting for So. He knew this moment was coming. He could tell the guy was getting comfortable, settling in for a fight. Then, without warning, So lunged at him, exploding with killing intent. In his mind, Kim could have at least shown a shred of humility, especially if he already knew he'd die by So's hand. But Kim didn't share that belief at all. So's attacks came relentless, every strike faster than the last. Yet, he couldn't figure out where Kim's unshakable confidence had gone. The guy wasn't countering, only blocking, dodging, reading the flow of battle like a ghost. Kim's defense was airtight but So wanted blood. The other players decided to jump in, drawn by the chaos. They shouted that they'd spare Sue's life if he just handed over the girl. So was getting bored. Kim wasn't attacking, just dancing around every blow. Against monsters, they'd been evenly matched. But in a duel between players, Kim looked weak to him. He saw no killer instinct, no fire, just calm precision. Kim, however, knew exactly what was going on. His opponent still hadn't mastered the art of the shadow strike. So mocked him, saying to keep showing off, since that'd only make it easier to finish him. Kim asked if So still planned to kill them, even if he didn't betray Kang. So admitted that before, he might have let Kim walk away. But now, he decided to end him and take the girl for himself. That's when Kim finally struck back. One clean, decisive hit that broke the silence. What happened next would be the consequence of So's own choices. Then, time rewound. An hour earlier, before this clash began. The dungeon had been sealed off by the administrator, and the players realized they needed to clear it fast or die trying. So thought they'd had enough of pretending. No more playing nice. He made up his mind to deal with Kim himself and take the kid. Their goal was simple: eliminate Kim and Kang once and for all. So was sure Kim couldn't do anything to stop them, no matter how strong he thought he was. They also figured Sue's stats weren't any better than theirs. So ordered his crew to keep Sue busy while he personally handled the so-called hero. During the first exchange, So realized something. Kim's fighting style had changed. His stats had skyrocketed. Every move carried lethal precision. Meanwhile, the others turned their attention to Sue, ready to take him down. But Kang jumped in, intercepting the attack just in time. Her defense held strong. She blocked the strike clean. Sue shot her a quick, grateful look, silently acknowledging the save. Then he unleashed his skill, Mighty Fist, his aura flaring with raw power. Kim, locked in his own fight, could sense every motion, every attack vector around him. The enemies couldn't believe how he dodged an arrow shot from his blind spot. It came from Go, their sniper and the backbone of every ambush they'd planned. For a brief moment, Kim realized the archer might be an even bigger threat than So himself. That's when Sue appeared behind Go, silent as a shadow. Go froze, panic flashing across his face. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. He yelled for Sue to stay back, but it was already too late. Sue took him down effortlessly, ending the fight before it even began. So felt a wave of frustration. He needed to win, but the battle was slipping away. Kim could see it in his movements. So's power level hovered around the 10th rank at best. Realizing that, So forced himself to calm down and search for the next opening to strike again. So figured the hero might have had better stats, but he had no clue what kind of skills Kim was hiding. Then something weird happened. He felt a strange liquid dripping onto his arm, warm but harmless. Glancing over, he saw Kim holding a thermos like it was part of some twisted joke. He thought the hero was just mocking him, toying with him before the kill. But Kim's calm smirk said otherwise. He told So to turn his head, to take one last look around. And when So did, his blood ran cold. From the ceiling, massive bees began pouring down in waves, their wings buzzing like an oncoming storm. For the first time, So felt real danger crawl up his spine. The swarm closed in from every direction, a living wall of death. Their first target was Go, the archer. Then they turned on So, diving toward him like guided missiles. Those creatures were drawn to the sweet scent. Just a splash of honey water was enough to drive them mad. This was the infamous two-path raid event, the Bee Swarm Assault. Despite the cute name, these things were nightmares in motion. They attacked in herds, thousands strong, relentless, and furious. Without a fire user in the party, facing them was suicide. There was only one strategy to survive: drop to the ground instantly. Because bees couldn't detect targets below a certain height, even one sting from their venomous tails could make a grown man scream. Within moments, the swarm overwhelmed. So, pinning him to the floor, tearing through his defenses. Kim watched coldly, knowing this was the price for trying to crush others. If you take lives, be ready to lose your own. To him, So's end was nothing but the consequence of his own greed. Then the system chimed, detecting the death of a player. A unique ability was forcibly unlocked. Kim recognized it immediately. It was one he'd heard of before. This ability activated only when countering attacks, granting power meant for fighting other players. In his original timeline, the skill wasn't exactly rare, but here it was hidden, unknown to most. Sue approached, his face calm but firm. He said Kim wasn't in the wrong. None of those guys deserve mercy. They'd forfeited their lives the moment they turned on the group. Kim realized Sue and Kang thought he was blaming himself for what happened. But he didn't feel guilt, only clarity. He couldn't let people who'd tried to kill them walk free. That would have only led to their own deaths later. So he didn't regret his choice, not for a second. Better to be a killer than the one who gets killed. The system notified him. His trust and respect stats had risen. His emotions ran high, but shock never came. Instead, he felt strangely calm, like he'd accepted the darkness within. It hit him then. He was changing, becoming someone else entirely. Kim walked toward the dungeon's crystal. The dungeon was almost cleared. Only 2 crystals stood between them, and victory. Then the system's tone shifted. The Soul Station crystal wasn't pleased with their intrusion. His eye of perception flared, detecting incoming danger. Kim shouted for his friends to back off. He'd handle this one alone. He'd already prepared for this. Special countermeasures against the crystal's venomous gaze. That's why he'd chosen the Mandara gloves as his reward. They boosted poison resistance, even if only slightly. It still wasn't enough to fully neutralize the toxin's effect. He had to destroy it fast, before the poison got too damn strong. The smoke around him grew so thick that he couldn't see a damn thing ahead. Kim's lungs burned. He couldn't hold his breath any longer. His eye of perception screamed danger, louder than ever. He couldn't tell where the crystal even was anymore. Sue couldn't figure out why Kim kept walking closer to the crystal like some madman. Then, out of nowhere, the poison effect of the Soul Station crystal started fading. The crystal released a blinding light, flooding the dungeon in radiance. Kim managed to neutralize it, barely, but he pulled it off. Sue and Kang realized that he had done it, that the impossible was now real. The system announced the capture of the Soul Station crystal. Sue stood frozen in awe. He hadn't seen anything through the smoke, but he could feel Kim's power. Kim explained that the bee venom had actually helped counter the crystal's poison. Sue asked where the hell he'd learned something like that. Kim knew it came from the research and strategy of the great scientist, Jackson. His friends were stunned by how much knowledge he carried. Having cleared the first crystal, they were pumped to finish the second one even faster. Meanwhile, Celine had been watching everything from above. Kim hadn't just used the bees to get rid of So. He'd used them to collect items that could nullify poison. It was all so brilliantly obvious that Celine didn't even need an explanation. With the Soul Station crystal in his hands, the dungeon's clearing conditions were fulfilled. Once the dungeon was cleared, its rift was automatically sealed. Celine decided it was time to hand out the rewards. Kim figured it had to be something special since she showed up in person. Normally, stat bonuses were distributed among the entire group that cleared the dungeon. But this time, player Kim had the right to choose a personal reward. The flashiest option was gold, straight-up wealth, but converting it into cash wasn't easy. After counting it out, Kim realized the amount wasn't that huge compared to future story dungeons. Any ordinary person would have picked the gold without thinking twice. But in these early days, player rights weren't protected by any laws. That meant the government took a huge chunk of whatever you found. Even gold was confiscated since it came from an unknown world and could pose a threat. So Kim chose a Type B recovery elixir instead. With that, the dungeon breach was completely sealed. Sometime later, Kim and his sister were riding a bus together. He suggested that they should move somewhere new, but she couldn't wrap her head around how he even had money for that. When he mentioned he'd saved 100 million won, she thought he'd lost his mind. Kim understood her reaction. It was a ridiculous amount of money. The elixir he'd chosen was highly effective against a rare, specific illness. He took it and went to meet a certain wealthy individual. That man was rich, desperate for a cure, and willing to pay big for the item. The buyer accepted both of Kim's conditions, and Kim earned nearly 1 billion won. If things went like last time, the deal would go through perfectly. It wouldn't just bring him money, it'd open doors to powerful connections. Meanwhile, Nuna was scrolling through news about that same man. The report mentioned his hair, and she brought it up in conversation with her brother. Apparently, his hair had grown back after taking the elixir. Turns out, it had just been a damn cure for baldness all along. But the man who had built a giant corporation from scratch saw potential for investment in it. Kim requested 100 million in cash and a home, custom built to his specifications. He also agreed to help with Kang's adoption, the girl whose future was shrouded in mystery. Their mother immediately recognized Kang as clever and full of life, and she agreed. After securing the house, Kim was eager for his family to move in, and his sister agreed. That day, Kim added, it would be better if everyone returned home early. At that moment, through the bus window, he noticed new gates opening. Outside, he spotted a girl named Shin. Kim stopped the bus and told his sister he had an urgent matter to attend to. He knew that in the Hanch district, only one gate could appear at that time. It was the first public dungeon clearance by the Sword Empress, described only briefly. Records of that dungeon weren't kept because it was special. Shin was the Sword Empress, and a powerful player who had cleared it first. Approaching her, Kim asked if she planned to enter. He couldn't find any information about her in the year 2028. She asked if he was a player and if he knew anything about the dungeon. Kim explained that monsters could pour out of the gate if the dungeon wasn't cleared in time. But that couldn't happen yet since other dungeons were already cleared. Even those who completed training spoke of breach possibilities, so it could be true. In the past, The Soul Station dungeon had been breached by the gates several times. Many players sacrificed their lives to understand the strategy for clearing it. The girl asked if she could enter as well. Kim suggested forming a party. She became curious about his level. When she heard he was level 19, she smiled. She was at the same level herself. She tried and successfully sent the invitation. The girl asked how old the hero was. Hearing he was 20, she was taken aback. She had assumed he was older. Smiling, Shin suggested they speak casually, since they were the same age. Kim suggested discussing that after they survived the dungeon. He hadn't expected to run into a gate again. But this was his chance to see the dungeon the Sword Empress had cleared right after training. Meanwhile, Nuna couldn't figure out where her brother had gone. Entering, they decided to survey the tunnel. The system announced the appearance of monsters. They were rabbit-type monsters. To the girl, they seemed as big as boss monsters, but didn't look very strong. Unlike with players, monster threat levels were easier to gauge. The rabbits posed almost no danger and weren't aggressive. They ran at any sign of threat, so it was best to kill them in one strike. Shin was delighted, since she had exactly the right skill for this. That's when Kim realized the girl was indeed the Sword Empress. She dispatched the rabbits quickly and efficiently. Kim didn't expect her to master her unique ability so fast. The atmosphere shifted instantly once the battle began. Shin immediately resembled the battle fanatic she would become 10 years later. Kim didn't anticipate finding rabbits behind those gates. They were tough to kill due to their speed, but their offense and defense were weak. Still, Kim could obtain the needed item if luck was on his side. Shin asked if he had been there before. After that, they introduced themselves, exchanging names. The girl was curious how the hero knew so much about the gates. Kim answered that it took a lot to truly know everything. But that answer didn't satisfy her. Just then, new monsters appeared before them. They decided to continue their conversation after dealing with them. Among the drops from the rabbits was an item that helped break growth limits at higher levels. So Kim decided not to move on until he got what he wanted. Celine considered him an extraordinary player. Rod joined her. Rod doubted that Kim was level 19 and decided to check his status. But access was forbidden. Kim had set personal viewing rights, not only closing the status window, but even deleting his name from the player ranking table. Rod realized the hero was sharp and definitely one of the smartest players around. She was convinced he generated serious income, so she wanted to broadcast him too. But Celine had signed an exclusive contract with Kim. Meanwhile, Kim battled the rabbits and secured a new item. It was a finely crafted iron sword. Handing it to Shin, he told her to make use of it. She accepted it with joy, thanking the hero, adding that the next item would be his. But the boy didn't need a weapon. He had a shared vision of the monsters that would appear 10 years later, so his own weapon sufficed. The system notified him that another item had been acquired. It was the best reward in that dungeon, the Legolas ring, which absorbed health. At that moment, Kim noticed the cleansing crystal appearing very quickly. He realized that killing a few monsters was enough, but not all gates were that simple. Shin sensed something had gone wrong, but Kim suggested discussing it later. The ring wasn't the only piece of equipment that could be used freely. His goal was to collect everything, even if it took hours. Shin noticed that he killed monsters as fast as she did. He possessed so much knowledge it was as if he had been at these gates before. The system reported that no more monsters would spawn. She thought they could escape if they killed enough rabbits. Kim pointed out which way they needed to go to the exit. The system announced that the cleansing crystal had been destroyed by force and the dungeon tunnel was now secured. Unlike ordinary dungeons, those gates couldn't be entered again once closed. But the hero managed to collect 8 rings. Kim wondered how he would explain his delay to his sister. Together with Shin, they exited through the gates they had entered. At that, she also reported that the zone was now open. Kim recognized her immediately. The administrator added that 2 players appeared, Shin and an unknown player whose knowledge and intuition could astonish. Someone had to win the duel, and a revote was needed for the player whose victory was trusted. Since Rod could control the attention of the guards, she was destined to become an excellent mid-rank administrator. Shin couldn't wrap her head around why everything had gone down like this. She worried whether they could have died in the chaos. Kim knew that even in the worst-case scenario, any injuries would heal once the zone shut down. He was shocked and hadn't expected to be forced into combat without the guards on his side. Celine hadn't disclosed the choice of guard boys. Rod didn't want to get involved either. So, she decided it was time to start the fight. Kim suggested a quick discussion before the clash. He wanted to say a few words to the true master of the Heavenly Demon Mountain, a guardian with millions of followers who had climbed to the top. In the future, he was meant to become a guardian of Shen. His character was no better than the Lion King, but he saw himself as a true warrior, not just brave. He believed in his strength, but it wasn't only courage that defined him. But at that moment, the hero himself wasn't confident in victory. The Guardian saw Kim as weak because he wasn't his disciple. Kim hadn't expected to fight a girl immediately after clearing the gates, but Shin was curious to see who would win. He handed his sword to her, claiming she could wield it better. Yet she noticed that Kim wasn't an ordinary fighter. He had perception and deep knowledge about the gates and their inner mechanics. He even showed how to escape, despite the darkness surrounding them. Shin grew curious about how far he would go if he fought seriously. Now that they shared similar skills, the heroine was eager to test him. Kim agreed to satisfy her curiosity. Shin decided to strike first. Immediately, the hero's eye of perception activated. She aimed straight for his neck. The administrator was stunned by their combat skills at this level. Kim anticipated her attacks using his perception, but he couldn't strike back because his sword technique lagged far behind. Only one option remained. Shin resolved to attack seriously, since they couldn't die, but the pain from injuries was real. Kim realized the heroine was gathering intel on his abilities. His priority was to avoid her finishing strike. Shin failed to land a hit because the boy was incredibly fast. He knocked the sword from her hands and she tumbled to the ground. In that moment, Shin acknowledged her defeat. Kim earned the title of first opponent. He acquired a skill that allowed him to approach opponents so swiftly they couldn't even notice. A powerful movement technique that didn't consume mana. Shin wondered what Kim had been thinking as he had triumphed. Everyone was astonished at the hero's victory. With that, the zone shut down, and it was all over. Their wounds healed. Shin suggested they not part ways so quickly. She proposed exchanging phone numbers and meeting again someday. She added that she liked the boy. Kim thought that was refreshingly straightforward. At that moment, the eye of perception detected danger. He realized there was no escaping this. He would have to take the hit. It was his sister, Nuna. She was furious that her brother had vanished without a word for so long. Arriving home, Kim knew they would soon have to leave this place. Packing would take 3 days, and his family would finally be able to live comfortably. It seemed his family could hardly believe even the documents for the house. On May 11, 2018, the catastrophe began. In zones scattered around the world for training, over 20 million people perished. The events matched Kim's records. He knew that if nothing changed in the future, by June 16th, dungeons and gates would begin manifesting across the country. Kim could foresee this, but there was no way he could solve all the problems. He wasn't a hero or a saint, just a player capable of one thing: survival. The boy wanted to play every day. He and Shin ventured into the forest. Shin had no clue where they were heading. Kim explained they were hunting a monster nearby. Slimes were too weak to count as monsters. A few other people were scattered in the forest. They discussed the chaos unfolding across the planet. Rumors had spread of monsters called mid-rank administrators killing humans. Spotting the slime, they guessed it could be dangerous. One of them, a 50-year-old woman, had never seen such drastic changes in the world before. Suddenly, something streaked past them. The woman couldn't see or understand what her companion meant. Kim noticed these women near the mountain and guessed they were victims of the incident. The woman was terrified, confused by the unfolding events. The hero calmed them, warning that any sound could trigger the monster. One of them shouted that the police needed to be called immediately. At that moment, a lycanthrope appeared before them. The women decided to flee, yet one of them fell to the ground. Kim stepped in to protect her. He followed the bloodlust he felt rising in him, guiding him upward. This was to be the boy's first real battle, without tricks. But he sensed an even stronger creature lurking nearby. At that moment, the monster lunged at him. Kim decided to strike, unleashing his skills. Before him appeared a fox with 6 tails, yet he managed to land a blow on the monster. The hero hadn't expected to encounter it so soon. It was an extremely powerful spirit-class monster, a cunning beast that relied on camouflage, sudden strikes, and even a hint of magic. Kim knew everything about it, but couldn't figure out why it had appeared there. Meanwhile, another monster attacked the woman, wounding her. In that instant, Shin used provocation. She had faced such a monster before. She was carefully strategizing her next move, so she decided to unleash the roar effect. Right after, she activated the platinum shield. Confidence radiated from her. She knew she could handle it. Shin believed Kim knew she could endure the monster's strike. She clenched the monster's paw with all her might, refusing to let go. In that instant, the hero charged in, piercing it with his sword. Shin landed the finishing blow, sealing the fight. The lycanthrope fell, lifeless. This predator of the training zone, a hidden monster, was the king of wolves. Kim thought this battle was relatively easy. Yet, the sudden appearance of the powerful monster had made casualties unavoidable. One of the women had died. This was the infamous Inwan's mountain murder case. The government announced that the lycanthrope culprit had been eliminated. The current level of development made capturing a spirit-type monster impossible. It was cunning, choosing the perfect moment to escape. But with its injuries, fleeing was out of the question. Suddenly, the fox appeared again before one of the women. She pleaded for help. The monster needed human flesh to heal its wounds. But Kim came to her aid. He realized it had been attacking tourists fleeing from the lycanthrope. From the wounds, it was clear the fox was trying to reach the insides. Kim suspected it was using a clone technique. If this were the main body, not a trace would remain of the woman. So he pondered where the real fox might be. He sensed the true body lurking near a tree. The fox had camouflaged itself, silently observing. It didn't realize Kim could perceive it with his eye of perception, or it would have fled long ago. It acted as if unaware, hoping to lure the real body. Using provocation, Shin realized her skill had failed. Kim calmed her, telling her to keep going until it fully focused on her. He decided to handle it himself, asking Shin to trust him. Its body was split into a real one and an illusion. Its attributes were divided between the two foxes. Kim knew that killing the illusion would scare the real fox into fleeing. He aimed for the real body, preparing a dagger throw. Shin noticed the real fox vanish. At that moment, she heard a sound like an arrow being released. The fox was slain. The brave Lion King was stunned by his dagger mastery. The system notified him of the foxtail acquisition. His ranking had also increased. At that moment, the sound of a helicopter reached them. They realized someone had called the police. Kim decided not to draw attention unnecessarily and quietly slipped away. At that moment, Celine appeared, curious about the boy's level. The administrator saw that the hero was at level 26. The system notified the activation of the pause effect. The guardian woman with the scales used the pause, and notifications from other guardians appeared as well. The hero received a rare ranked weapon, the morning gear of the typhoon. Along with it, a consumable that accelerated growth but twisted alignment toward darkness. Such items could turn any player into a ranker. The final offer worthy of attention bore the title of True Master of the Celestial Demon Mountain. Kim had never imagined he'd get a chance to learn it. He suspected the Guardians were trying to influence him to choose one of them once he hit level 30. They wanted to show they could offer much, including the power of pause. Celine was supposed to notify the Guardians that he had reached level 25. Kim knew she was swamped with questions about informing everyone. He understood exactly what was going on at that moment. He was certain she was in a tight spot because of the announcement. The boy knew she couldn't function properly if she angered all the Guardians. Celine didn't understand what Kim was aiming for. Kim wanted 3,000 coins. He knew she wasn't in a position to dictate terms, trapped in that tough situation. The girl offered 2,700 coins. But the boy insisted on his terms. Celine reluctantly agreed. Kim decided it was time to sign the contract. Later, Kim and Shin rode in a car together. Suddenly, his phone rang. Picking it up, he heard a familiar voice. The girl mentioned reading news about the person who killed the monster on the mountain. She then thanked him for helping her mom. Kim also suggested a trip to a faraway place. He gathered Kan, Shin, and Sue at a table. He proposed a raid the next day in Japan to clear gates that had appeared in Osaka. Shin remembered the gates. They had hunted there for 5 straight hours. This time, they needed to enter and study the new gates firsthand. Cities worldwide began preparing for training and the gate openings after Korea's incident. Yet, no preparation could shield people from sudden gates, and casualties could reach hundreds or thousands. Kim believed a breakthrough would happen very soon. If a prepared group went, they could reduce the number of injured. He warned that they could refuse. This was not a joyride. But he was ready to cover all costs for tickets and necessities. All they needed were passports, clothes, and to arrive at the airport the next day. Shin thought he had invited her on a simple trip. She asked how he had this information. Kim replied it was just a prophetic dream. He could glimpse important events through dreams but never revealed them. The girl didn't fully believe him. Kim said that in their world, things could appear that had never existed. Whether to believe it or not was entirely their choice. Shin thought they didn't need to go that far. But then she decided to treat it like a date. Sue agreed, ready to follow Kim anywhere, indebted for his life. Kan also agreed, never having flown on a plane before. Kim expected at least one refusal, but with this team, he had nothing to worry about. He considered his squad extremely strong even among newcomers. The next day, they set off for Osaka. There shouldn't be any roadblocks, but Kim didn't know the exact time the gates would open. All he had was intel that training in Tokyo had started shortly before the breach. Soon after, gates started appearing, accompanied by weak monsters. Occasionally, insanely strong ones popped up, but those were exceptions. Kim decided they'd probably have to roam the area for about a week. Kan asked if it was okay to be gone that long. Previously, the hero and his family had moved into a new house. At first glance, they weren't thrilled, but deep down, they were happy. Meanwhile, the team arrived in Japan. The gates were expected to manifest right in the city center. But the hero had no idea how many days it would take. At that moment, only Kim could see her. She asked about Japan. The woman suspected he hadn't come there for vacation. And since the law prohibited disclosure of certain info, Selena couldn't reveal much. Exceptions existed when Guardians conveyed their intentions through quests. Among the Guardians who issued the quests, some names weren't disclosed. By their will, Selena organized the quest. Kim realized he had no choice. The quest had to be completed before returning to Korea. As dinner time approached, they decided to head to a restaurant. At first, Kim seemed like just a safe, ordinary player to Selena. But the more she watched, the more she suspected he was maximizing every advantage. It was hard for her to believe he was using the Guardians. Kim was grateful to all who offered the best proposals and knew he didn't deserve such attention. Yet, he didn't plan to accept any single proposal. He didn't dare choose one Guardian, nor risk picking all of them. He decided only to accept their support. The boy promised to show the kind of gameplay they expected from him in the future. At that moment, he received 3,000 coins from Selena and the good impressions of the Guardians observing the game. Approaching one of the establishments, they decided to go inside. Suddenly, they saw people screaming and running out into the street. At that instant, the team realized they had found what they were looking for. The system notified them that a turtle nest had been detected. Kim instructed Khan to go in first. Despite her appearance, she was the strongest among them all. Entering, they saw it was pitch dark inside. The floor was a mess of mud, water, and sludge. These gates weren't secured, so Kim had no info on the environment. At that moment, a gnome appeared before them. It asked why humans were there. Kim felt the same thrill as when seeing Selena. His perception eye couldn't detect the creature. It far surpassed the user. It was the fairy Selen. The boy seemed younger than his age, but moved like an experienced player. In the past, the fairy had been famous under the name Hunter among promising players and ranked third among streamers on the Japanese service. A player from her stream should be nearby. The hero was certain the turtle nest hadn't been cleared last time. He knew that if other players were already inside, they wouldn't stand a chance and would die. So he decided to buy a gate map from the item shop. The map displayed the locations of all team members. It cost 1,000 coins. If any team member was in danger, they could send a signal through the map. Yellow meant attention needed. Red signaled imminent danger. They had to always monitor the map while moving and stay silent to avoid drawing attention. After that, Kim laid out his plan. They'd split into two groups and search for any useful intel. Kim and Khan went together. The most important rule was always watching their step. Quicksands lurked in spots like these. One wrong step and you'd fall without a second chance. Sue and Shin spotted a level 11 golden turtle. The boy decided to alert Kim before taking it down. But suddenly the turtle vanished. Nearby, the heroes noticed an unknown figure carrying a sack on his shoulder. They approached and asked if the boy was Japanese. "Not quite," the stranger replied, noting the turtle's defenses were formidable. Sue guessed the boy had been pulling turtles out of the water and finishing them off. Signaling Kim, they didn't wait. Suddenly, the stranger screamed that a monster was chasing him. Sue didn't understand what was happening or whether a monster really lurked in the swamp. The stranger begged for help, screaming he didn't want to die. Shin sprinted toward him, grabbing his arm. She saw a monster in the water dragging him down. The swamp suddenly began expanding. She realized the boy could pull her in too. At that moment, Kim came to their aid. The swamp crocodile was a level 17 monster, usually not particularly skilled. But in the swamp, its strength rivaled a level 25 beast. Defeating it there was far harder, as the swamp gave it cover. Kim felt Shin being grabbed by the unknown and dragged into the muck. He understood that if she went under, she could die. But her mind was clouded. She just wanted to help. The girl panicked, unsure what to do next. Kim warned her that in such a situation there might be no second chance. Sue asked what they should do next. Kim decided they had to continue the hunt. Since the monster had bitten, it would soon fall asleep and crawl ashore. The hero had seen something like this in prophetic dreams and told them to wait. The fairy was amazed that Kim was a player with prophetic visions, but it didn't look like he had foreseen the boy's death. The crocodile surfaced and dragged itself onto dry land. Sue wanted to step in and finish it off. Kim saw that the boy's fists were already brimming with magical power, but Shin wanted to handle the monster herself. Her cold-blooded focus and thirst for the kill pushed her beyond normal human limits. Stepping closer, the girl unleashed a fierce strike. The system announced victory over the swamp crocodile. The boy couldn't believe she'd reached that level without the eye of perception. The reward item was a claw of the swamp dragon. The system declared that the quest would be issued to the hero since he had received the item. Shin yielded the quest to the hero without hesitation. Kim believed fighting in the swamp was pure suicide, so he decided they had to take care of the other monsters on land. Kim purchased a beginner's spear from the shop. The system reported an item called Black Bull Meat, which gave instant fullness with a single bite. It was the same item he'd obtained in the Soul Station dungeon before meeting So. Sue realized it could be used as bait for the crocodile. Kim warned the team to stay alert. Monsters could grab their legs any time. Holding the meat over the swamp, a crocodile instantly lunged out after it. Even a small bite triggered the fullness effect. The team decided to exploit its habit of crawling ashore after eating. The moment it left the water, the swamp's power faded away. All that remained was to aim and strike. Slaying the beast that crawled out was no challenge. Even with his knowledge of the future, the boy knew little about the turtle nest. But he was sure the clearing would fail, causing a dungeon break. Still, even without a plan, the team handled everything like pros. Kim reported to Celine that they had collected the swamp dragon's claws. The system rewarded them for completing the quest. Key locations of the dungeon were now revealed on the map. They now knew almost everything about the terrain. To fully clear the turtle nest, they first had to complete the crocodile hunt quest. On the map, they found the nest itself. The team entered the turtle nest. Kim realized that the Japanese player had found this place first. Now he understood why that guy had so many golden turtles. Scanning everything carefully, he found no clear crystal. The map showed 3 separate nests. They had to check them all. Kim warned Shin and Sue to block the crocodiles from slipping back into the water, or they'd never catch them again. Each turtle dropped a hefty number of coins. Sometimes a random loot box filled with extra coins appeared. Shin saw 2 nests filled with an entire heap of them. Hunting them all together was way better than taking them down one by one. In the future, everyone would know about the golden turtle collection. The condition was to gather more than 40 golden turtles in one spot. Soon, farmers would appear, raising turtles specifically for that purpose. The poisonous golden turtle had a level exceeding 30. It could even surpass level 35, making it almost unbeatable. Even Shin curiously asked what the boy was working on. She felt satisfied with the experience gained and decided not to be greedy about the gold. Deep down, she chose to see this mission as a date. Sue rolled up too, ready to back up the hero without asking for any reward. Dude was all about the team grind. Kim asked if anyone was packing some heavy blunt gear, something that could smash, not slice. Sue raised his hand. He had a massive war hammer, a beast of a weapon made for cracking skulls and shells alike. Kim laid it down straight. They'd gather up all the coins, but 70,000 were his to claim. The rest? Split among the crew. Everyone nodded. Fair was fair. He wasn't the type to hoard loot. Shin felt genuine gratitude. The guy wasn't just strong, he had honor. From the very start, the hero never planned to take everything for himself. He knew he'd need to keep his crew together for a while, and loyalty wasn't something you could buy. It had to be earned. When the golden turtle finally fell, they gained experience points and stacks of coins. Victory hit hard, like a boss clear. After that, the hero received a chest with a random number of coins inside. Luck was part of the grind. If he could collect 7 of these boxes, the next hidden fragment would unlock. Kim knew it wouldn't be easy, but challenge was just another name for destiny, and he was ready to push through. The squad watched him in silence. They could all feel it. The dude's level was way beyond theirs. He wasn't just another player. The system chimed in again, announcing another coin box drop. 50,000 more to reach the target. The finish line was glowing ahead. Kim told Celine to share all the details about the rewards he had just earned. Transparency mattered. He planned to use one of the boxes to hand out 3,000 coins to each team member. The team was hyped. Everyone felt like they were part of something legendary. Sue then smashed the purification crystal, marking the dungeon's official cleanse. Celine transmitted the completion rewards for clearing the turtle's nest. The administrator announced that the broadcast would continue in the Korean Tower of Beginners. The crew arrived at the tower, a colossal spire filled with mysteries and danger. Inside, they found only AI-driven entities, beings that existed solely within these special dimensional spaces. Their first objective was to clear the Soul Station dungeon again, and repeat that feat 25 times. It was one of the fastest routes to rapid evolution, grind to grow, no shortcuts. Shin and Sue already knew the strat, so they figured it wouldn't take them long. Kim told Kang to head home, promising he'd return by evening. Meanwhile, the hero made his way up to the second floor of the tower. There was a reason. It all connected to the Demon King. That guy was infamous, always appearing in the aftermath of world-ending disasters. He was the first to conquer the tower's second floor and had used that advantage mercilessly. Since the Demon King had beaten him to it, Kim suspected he might have already unlocked that same level here too. Suddenly, the system flared. An overwhelming surge of power had been detected. His eye of perception was momentarily paralyzed, like his senses had been hijacked. Kim froze, realizing he'd definitely seen someone. And deep down, he knew that presence belonged to the Demon King. But when he reached the top, the space was empty. Just silence, humming with residual energy. Kim ordered the administrator to open the hidden item shop. It required 50,000 coins to access, a hefty price for the unprepared. Kim didn't hesitate. He burned the coins. This wasn't a feature available to rookies. It was something only the bold could even see. Selene couldn't help but find the player suspicious. He wasn't following the rules of the system. The administrator tried to scan him, but Kim stood his ground. He wanted that arrogant being to come to him instead. The administrator didn't like being called a dwarf. His pride bristled. So, he activated forced submission mode. A dangerous move, even for him. Kim stood firm, realizing that even now, the administrator didn't have the power to kill him. Kim received a buff that let him resist the crushing power of the mighty guardians. His aura flared, golden sparks dancing across his frame. With the buff's power, he could even read Neptune's status, a feat reserved for those beyond mortal limits. Neptune had chased him down for being weaker, but he had no proof, no right, just arrogance. Kim wanted one thing, for that so-called god to apologize. Neptune, realizing he'd crossed a line, muttered an apology. But the hero demanded more, a tribute, a token to seal that apology in stone. From Neptune, he received a memorandum, a divine contract ensuring the god wouldn't attack after the broadcast ended. Back home, Kim spent time lurking on an online forum, a small site that would one day evolve into a massive player community. Back then, it was the meeting ground for hunters, mercs, and infiltrators. One thread caught his eye. Players discovered that the Soul Station dungeon could be cleared multiple times. Many tried their luck, eager to claim glory, but most didn't make it out alive. Because to squeeze every drop of growth out of limited time, Kim had no choice but to take on a high-risk dungeon. It wasn't just a death trap. It was a hidden vault, a treasure hoard buried under danger and despair. One determined guy was forming a small party to dive into an unexplored dungeon. The Firemaster, a thin, unassuming dude who, 10 years from now, would be chubby and jolly, was leading the charge. Kim decided it was worth meeting him. When the Firemaster spotted Kang, he froze. He hadn't expected a little girl to be their third player. He refused to let a child step into a dungeon like that. The guilt alone would kill him. The Firemaster knew the dungeon's main beast, the Fire Horse, was around level 32. That meant they'd need someone who could tank the thing's explosive charges. He believed victory was within reach. Maybe he could even solo it if luck favored him. The Fire Horse was a beast-type monster that spared the weak but punished arrogance. Yet its strength was insane. The system had unlocked an escape route just to keep the difficulty from breaking players. Even so, the Firemaster had failed to advance past it before. This time, the Firemaster sighed, taking the child on his back. He still couldn't understand why she was there, but he couldn't leave her behind. The system pinged. You have entered the Fire Horse Meadow of the Short Table Dungeon. Before them, the infernal steed stood, snorting flames that turned the air molten. Kim took point, aiming straight for the beast's forehead, the weak spot. Together with Kang, they launched their synchronized strike, Watching them move, the Fire Master's doubts vanished. Those two, brother and sister, weren't normal. They were prodigies, pure and rare as myth. The Fire Horse might have been a low-tier monster by classification, but in battle, it fought like a demon straight from legend. It shrugged off fire damage, forcing them to up their offensive tempo to ridiculous levels. Kim called out to the girl, signaling her to pull something from her gear. He reached for the most unexpected weapon imaginable, a fire extinguisher. When the Fire Horse's HP dropped below 20%, it entered phantom mode, its body blazing into ghost fire. They had to smother its flames fast, before it could fully transcend into that unstoppable form. The Fire Master landed a critical hit, shaking the dungeon's core. Together, the trio brought the fiery monster down. The man stood there, stunned. The siblings had fought like legends reborn. He couldn't believe he hadn't thought to use a fire extinguisher himself. Kang pointed out the loot drop shimmering on the ground. It was fire water, a crimson liquid pulsing with elemental heat. The Fire Master asked what it was for, still catching his breath. Kim explained. It was a stimulant that awakened the latent magical attribute of fire within its user. Kim offered the master a drink, her tone calm but confident, as if sealing a bond before the next storm. The guy declared that every reward from now on would belong to him and Khan. No sharing, no hesitation, just pure resolve. The dungeon itself had been crafted by the Western giant, its sole purpose being the awakening of the master. The boy wondered what kind of relic would be hidden up ahead this time, his curiosity burning as bright as the fire around them. As they moved deeper in, the group stumbled upon raging flames and began figuring out how in the world they were supposed to cross. The hero guessed that the Western giant designed all this so that only the true master could make it through alive. The river of fire stretched nearly 7 meters wide, like a molten barrier separating the weak from the chosen. This trial was built for the one who had consumed the fire water, the chosen flame bearer. Since the master was the one who drank it, he alone could survive the crossing. But the man refused to go solo. He believed they had to face this inferno together, or not at all. He decided he wouldn't leave his comrades behind just to save himself. Yet Kim warned that this kind of loyalty could easily turn into a death sentence for all of them. Kim suggested the master should clear the area ahead while nothing disastrous had happened yet. Since the firewater granted him the protection of a special guardian, taking on this fiery zone would be within his power. After a few moments of thought, the master nodded in agreement. Out of all the relics, the hero decided to acquire the Whispering Stone. It allowed secret communication, conversations no one else could hear. The hero sent a message to Celine through it. He told her to pause their broadcast and switch the feed to other players so the Guardians wouldn't get bored. But the administrator wasn't one to take orders. She'd handle her stream however she wanted. The Guardians were hooked, eager to see how the boy planned to cross that blazing river. The hero planned to stop the broadcast and resume it right at the moment they'd be escaping the flames. The administrator guessed that he already had a plan to cross the fire. Kim ordered the girl to climb up onto his shoulders. No hesitation, just trust. Selin agreed to end the stream in 30 seconds. The hero decided to use instant teleportation, a risky, high-cost move. The only other option was to endure the pain of the flames head-on. Without any preparation, they would have been burned alive in seconds. The guy had cleared Soul Station's dungeon several times before, mocked by the Guardians for putting on a boring show. But this time, he unleashed every single reward he'd earned so far. Thanks to that, the hero managed to cross the fiery valley in one piece. Kim realized that every challenge had its own trick, every wall its secret crack. Can earned the title Fireborn, her aura blazing brighter than ever. That title could eventually evolve into the legendary one, Immortal God of Flames. But their journey wasn't over just yet. They still had to wait for the master to reach Kuntan. He managed it 6 hours later, exhausted but alive. When the master saw his friends again, shock froze him. They were still alive. Tears streamed down his face as he confessed how terrified he'd been for them. The firewater itself was a rare magical essence that couldn't be found even after 10 years. With that book, one could easily rise to become one of the world's top players. Then Kim made the master another offer, one that would bind their fates even deeper. The contract was successfully registered in the system. The master figured the boy probably liked him, given how serious he looked. But in truth, this gave Kim the right to interfere in the master's personal scenario, earning not only rewards but precious information. After that, they parted ways, agreeing to meet again in 10 days. When Kim saw the Uflex building, he instantly knew that a dungeon would soon spawn there. There was still time to uncover the truth, but for now, they decided to grab a bite before the next storm began. The story jumped back to July 23, 2018, the day the dungeon first opened and changed everything. It was the toughest beginner-level dungeon ever, the one where the master had to start his personal scenario. A trial meant only for the brave. Every single day, Kim was grinding, planning out the shape of his future like a strategist carving fate itself. He knew the park of the world had to be protected, yet he was painfully aware that his current level wasn't enough. The Players Association officially launched their operations on the 22nd, just a day before chaos unfolded. When the hero approached the entrance, a guard stopped him, running a full data check before letting him through. Especially now, the Players Association was taking things way more seriously than before. Kim and Khan stepped into the Soul Station dungeon once more, the air thick with tension and burning mana. The boy's heart was pounding with hunger, not for battle, but for loot and rewards waiting beyond those corridors. One of the officers reported over the phone that Kim had entered again. A shadowy observer decided to keep tracking him, intrigued by the boy's persistence. He notified his superior that the two players had now entered the Soul Station dungeon for the 30th time. They figured Kim was running some secret strategy, one he only shared with his tight-knit crew. The guild head decided it was time to get closer to the boy. He planned to offer Kim the position of guild leader, a move that could change everything. The man instructed his assistant to deliver the message carefully, making sure Kim understood his intentions clearly. Since So was preparing to launch a new guild, everyone assumed his grandson would take the lead. But the man couldn't shake off the memory of Kim's piercing gaze, a look that seemed to see straight through him. Kim could become their legendary blade, the sharp edge that would push the guild 10 steps ahead of the competition. Yet in truth, the guild head didn't want a hero, he wanted a hunting dog. Meanwhile, Khan received a notification about a hidden fragment and asked if they were going to challenge it. Kim refused. The hidden zone only appeared once a player hit level 30. Their levels were already among the best, so they decided to skip that path for now. The team agreed to regroup the next day and aim for the second floor instead. After checking Shin and Su's stats, the boy realized they needed to clear the dungeon at least 25 times more. The next day, they all entered the second level together, ready for what lay ahead. Stronger monsters awaited there, and there were no safe zones this time. The risk of getting ambushed right at the entrance was insanely high. The hero could tell that Khan was a born genius. She instantly blocked the first attack without hesitation. Their enemies specialized in long-range assaults, sniping from the shadows. Kim knew this was it. The time to face real monsters, not training dummies. Most beasts that spawned right after the tutorial were fragile against basic weapons. But orcs? They had natural resistance, impervious to flame arrows and normal blades. One of the orcs lunged at Kan, roaring like a beast possessed. But she countered flawlessly, deflecting 2 more incoming strikes. Kim ordered Shin to follow his lead without question. At first, she didn't fully understand what he was planning. From the second floor onward, they had to fight as one, no solo moves. A true team, where everyone knew their role and trusted the others completely. Only then could they clear the dungeon without a single casualty. Shin dashed into a blind zone, dodging an arrow that could have ended her right there. Plus, the orc's reaction time was nearly twice as slow as Kim's lightning-fast reflexes. In that instant, the girl decided to unleash the demon step technique. Kim's eyes widened. She finally understood how to move like a predator in the dark. The treasure of the heavenly demon, a technique bestowed only upon true masters of the celestial demonic mountain. With that, they maneuvered around all the orcs and took down the archer in a clean strike. But another orc released an arrow that pierced straight toward Shin. Kim dove in without hesitation, tackling her to the ground and taking the hit himself. When they stepped onto the second floor of the dungeon, Kim didn't bother explaining the plan in detail. He knew his crew didn't need a lecture. They were built different. His teammates weren't the kind who needed things spelled out. They read the battlefield like a second language, understanding everything without a word spoken. Each of them fought under different conditions, pushing through chaos in their own way to reach the goal. Kim didn't appreciate Shin's sudden strike. She apologized, knowing she had crossed the line. He warned her that one reckless move like that could have jeopardized the entire squad. Shin realized she was the only one who had failed to complete her task while everyone else had nailed theirs. She didn't want to be a burden. She wanted to repay the team for their trust. Then the system announced a shift. Her profession had changed because of a title. That kind of evolution only triggered at level 30 after forging a contract with the Guardians. The Guardian had originally offered that title to Kim himself. So he turned down the title. He had come back to the past to surpass the Swordmaster, not to be bound by another title. Shin couldn't understand why he'd refused such power. Kim explained that he'd seen a glimpse of his own potential. His path was already set. His intuition allowed him to simplify any battle for his team, reading combat flow like an open book. Shin believed that Kim was born to lead. He considered leadership not a burden, but a gift, his unique talent. Shin noticed something strange. When she followed his commands, it felt as if a glowing path appeared before her, guiding every step. Kim believed her swordsmanship potential far outshone his own. He also knew that the title suited her far better than it ever could him. With it, she could blaze brighter than anyone else, perhaps even become the most renowned player in the world. The title was officially offered to her. Kim warned her never to share that information, not even with friends. Veteran players knew better than to expose their titles or guardian contracts. After that, they entered a village of orc warriors together. The team instantly realized another battle awaited. The script of the second barrier had changed slightly this time. Orcs no longer turned to stone after destroying the purification crystal. They had to destroy 3 crystals within a set time, or a hunter would appear. And that would be game over. Sue spotted several orcs noticing them and closing in fast. Kim ordered everyone to split up and hunt for the crystals while avoiding direct confrontation. They had 10 minutes to pull it off. Suddenly, a towering orc warrior emerged before them. A beast of brutal strength. Sometimes dungeon scripts shifted mid-run. Usually that happened when a player's growth rate was off the charts, which made defeating that creature way harder than usual. It was a monster that grew stronger the longer it fought, a nightmare that fed on endurance. At the start, it could evolve only into a sentient orc warrior. But that evolution gap was massive. Its level could spike close to 40. Kim realized that if the hunter joined the fight, they'd lose any chance of clearing this stage. He needed a new plan, something unconventional. He gripped the iron rod he'd picked up earlier, a key item that might turn the tide. Kim directed them toward a tent flying a tall flag, suspecting something important was hidden there. He gave each member their route, moving with the precision of a tactician. Meanwhile, he stayed behind to deal with the warriors himself. Shin sprinted toward the crystal, weaving between attacks, her resolve blazing like fire. She made it. The orcs, who had been hunting her relentlessly, suddenly stopped. Something in her presence, fierce and radiant, broke their will to fight, and they knelt, surrendering before her strength. When they peeked inside the tent, they found all the orcs asleep, sprawled out like beasts after a feast, unaware of the danger creeping in. Since the petrification effect was gone, there was no easy mode left. They had to fight their way through. Kim quickly shared the cleanup plan with Shin, giving her the details she needed. Su and Kang were to break through the orc ranks head-on, carving a path of chaos. Meanwhile, Shin pounced on one of the creatures, her blade flashing with intent. Her strikes sliced deep, leaving trails of blood that shimmered under the dungeon's eerie light. Then she unleashed her quick strike skill, her speed blurring into a crimson storm. The noise woke the rest of the orcs. The entire camp erupted into fury. There was no point in Kim rushing for the crystal now. Destroying it wouldn't end the fight. The enemies would still remain. So he had only one choice: eliminate every last one of them. He struck them one by one, slicing throats with surgical precision. He couldn't overcommit, only hit, fade, and strike again like a shadow. The team soon realized something crucial. The head orc had a serious weakness to blood. As the scent filled the tent, the chieftain grew delirious, turning berserk and slaughtering his own warriors. Then they saw it. The orc's body began to expand, muscles tearing, bones reshaping into something monstrous. Kim stepped forward. He decided to face the giant head-on. That was their only path to survival. In that moment, the system rewarded him with a rancor skill: resistance to mental attacks. His mind hardened like steel. Kang tried to rush in to help, but Kim signaled her to stay back. Against this monster, her power would be useless. None of them could block its attacks. The brute's strength was overwhelming. Only Kim could dodge its blows using instant teleportation, blinking across the battlefield like a phantom. He was the only one who could get close enough to strike. Inside the small pouch he'd given her earlier were beast horns. They carried a paralyzing venom, a toxin born from the training grounds of wolf dens. It was a trophy from one of Kim's earlier trials. The horn alone couldn't fully paralyze the great orc warrior, but it was enough to slow him down, to make his movements heavy and sluggish. Even so, his attack and defense stats remained absurdly high. His body no longer obeyed his will, yet he was still strong enough to crush ordinary people like insects. He was a predator, and he knew it. Even stabbing his eyes wasn't fatal. The only true weak point left was his jaw, the beast's most vulnerable spot. Kim drove his weapon into that weak point and jammed the iron rod deep inside, keeping the monster's mouth forced open. He couldn't let that rod slip. It was the key to finishing the fight. The whole team joined in, battling the massive warrior on equal ground. When it was over, the kill reward was shockingly small, just a single molar from the orc's jaw. But for completing the quest, Kim received 2 valuable items from the Great Orc Warriors set. Along with that came a rare skill: intimidation. Then the system sent another alert. The cowboy of Las Vegas had begun observing the hero. This guardian valued synergy, teamwork, and the art of synchronized combat. The cowboy offered Kim a gift: the leather pants of the Great Orc Warrior. With that, after regrouping, the team charged at the remaining orcs, striking fast and without hesitation. Then came the system's final message. In 20 seconds, the team would be teleported out of the dungeon. Their mission was complete. Only Kim noticed the glowing ripples of a hidden portal shimmering before him. Without hesitation, he yelled for the others to go first, then dove straight in himself, vanishing into the light. It turned out to be a secret fragment, a hidden quest spot that only Kim could see. In the blink of an eye, he was dropped into a mysterious forest, an unknown world filled with silence and magic. It was classified intel, data that only skilled players were allowed to access. Such information usually appeared only at the start of a player's training phase. Thanks to his unique ability, Kim could see safe zones invisible to ordinary players. So he figured if the world had opened doors meant only for him, he'd better treat it as a blessing, not a curse. His new goal was clear: find and talk to the master of this hidden forest. Still, he couldn't wrap his head around what this place even was. The forest stretched endlessly, as massive as the whole city of Seoul. One wrong move, and he knew he could starve to death before ever finding a way out. Checking his stats, he realized he'd already reached level 30. Even Kim, who thought he'd seen it all, didn't know a forest like this existed. Suddenly, the system chimed in. His perception skill had leveled up. Then Celine, his ethereal guide, started explaining the enchanted gear he had just received. The magic fire was capable of burning continuously for over 3,000 hours. The hero couldn't help but be fascinated by the sponsor-grade equipment. Celine ordered him to recite everything she'd told him, word for word. Kim repeated it perfectly without missing a beat, but he found it weird. The mission felt almost too easy, too fast. What really bothered him, though, was how little he understood about this forest. The only lead he had was to search for the forest's master. Kim also noticed something unsettling. Time flowed differently here. He didn't think this dungeon was supposed to be that complex, where even the directions kept shifting. When night fell, he set up camp and lit a small fire to keep warm. Celine asked if he'd learned anything new about the area, but Kim instantly realized that question wasn't really hers. It came from the Watchers speaking through her. His exploration wasn't exactly thrilling, but he kept his focus sharp. Every detail mattered. He was determined to find some kind of clue. Eventually, he discovered 3 types of claw marks on nearby trees. Judging by the shape, they belonged to feline-type monsters. He also realized that by staying near the forest's edge, he could avoid most monster attacks. At night, strange flying beasts prowled the skies, their cries echoing through the darkness. What struck him as odd was the absence of any traces of victims. He figured the first day's calm wouldn't last forever. Still, he believed he could handle whatever came his way, as long as he kept his cool. For the first time, Kim faced a dungeon without a clear strategy, guided only by instinct and the faint traces of unknown beasts. He knew fear was natural here, but he fought to keep his composure. To him, this kind of game, unpredictable and raw, was the most exciting kind there was. Some would call that instinct a talent. All he could hope for was not to become one of those players who shined only at the start and faded later. On the 4th day of his exploration, things finally shifted. He stumbled into a small settlement, the Village of the Believers, as the sign called it. It was marked as a safe zone, though the buildings were burned and hollowed out. Among the ruins, he found one house that was still standing, barely damaged. Inside, he discovered an old letter written on church stationery. But one line stood clear. The village had been destroyed by the wrath of the forest's master. Spotting movement on the far edge of the forest, Kim guessed this was where he might finally encounter the forest's master. His perception skill tingled. Something was watching him at that very moment. A strange unease crawled over him, and he decided not to relax, even in the safe zone. The system chimed. Kim could no longer teleport freely. He attempted to explore the western edge of the village, but a transparent wall blocked his path. At that, Kim knew that Cowboy had a habit of luring players with tempting offers, impossible for most to refuse. The system revealed that the hidden fragment promised a reward for clearing the forest in 3 days. The bounty was set at a staggering 100,000 coins for success. Kim wondered what would happen if he failed the task. The administrator explained that failure meant he could only contract with Cowboy, and no one else. Celine asked if Kim would accept the mission. He refused. Gambling was never his style. Occasional risks were fine, but he wouldn't make a habit of it. Kim knew clearing the zone in 3 days would require more than skill. It demanded luck. Only fools made blind bets without any intel. At level 29, turning down such an offer might seem laughable, but he didn't care. He decided to follow the letter's instructions and head to the eastern village of Dante. Since the journey was long, he needed to find food. So he hunted a native boar. While tracking it, he learned several things about the forest paths and the creatures that roamed them. The boar was a powerful monster, roughly level 25. Kim knew creatures like this were usually hyper-aware of their surroundings. Yet these boars showed no fear at all. He assumed no one had ever hunted them before. They had no natural predators. The system announced that he had obtained a fruit basket. Still, the sensation of being watched persisted, triggered by his heightened perception. An unknown observer had been tracking him since the village. Kim guessed it might be the forest's master keeping tabs on him. He had gathered plenty of info, but the nagging feeling that he'd missed something refused to leave. Determined, he hastened toward Dante Village. Suddenly, a magical rope trap appeared before him, strange and out of place. Arriving at the village, Kim entered a nearby house immediately. Inside, he discovered another letter, this one addressed to the village elder. The message spoke of a sacrificial ritual. He realized that failure to perform the ritual might result in the same fate as the burned village. Outside the house, Kim noticed a well. Peering into it, he saw a figure on the brink of death. He decided to use the rope trap, hoping it might provide some clue. Known for their exquisite healing skills and ethereal beauty, elves could mend wounds and restore vitality like no one else. Bringing it to her nose, the elf slowly regained consciousness. She seemed almost plant-like, revived instantly by the potion. The elf thanked Kim for rescuing her. He guessed she must have been a resident of the village, targeted by the forest master's wrath. She explained that she had failed to deliver the required sacrifice to the altar. Kim realized the potion had only temporarily revived her. Soon she would need to return to nature's embrace. The elf was destined to turn to dust, becoming nourishment for the ancient oak. Kim realized this forest was utterly bizarre. He guessed the hidden zone was a fake, crafted to resemble an ordinary, unknown forest. As expected, the elf crumbled to dust and vanished. Then he felt a surge of green wind, though it was invisible to his eyes. This was a zone with reckless, unrefined settings. It was as if the one observing had read about it in books, then copied it, keeping tabs on Kim. He knew that failing to dismantle the fake zone here could mean death. There was a high chance he'd become just another player tasked with discovering this place next. His perception reacted to the intense will of a true player. Kim was sure the fabricated zone had definite boundaries. Letters approaching the limits triggered alerts that he couldn't go further. Enraged, he resolved to break through the fake boundaries. At first glance, it seemed he was still in the old forest, but the scale had shrunk dramatically. Before, his perception couldn't encompass it, but now the forest was the size of a small village. Kim guessed something had helped him collapse such an expansive zone. He suspected an artifact had suddenly amplified his magical power. At that moment, he wondered why no one had appeared in his line of sight. It was the forest master, a thin goblin. The creature had 3 evolutionary stages. When they first appeared in Italy, 400 people had been devoured at that very spot. But now, he faced only a stage 1 goblin. The goblin felt embarrassed and fearful, worried Kim might steal its treasure. Kim knew the goblin had hidden its magical enhancement stone behind it. Flustered, the goblin's intellect had dropped to that of a child. Kim unleashed his special instant strike skill. He knew such a powerful technique would leave an opening. But he managed to defeat the goblin. Kim realized he had handled everything skillfully. He decided to leave, planning to claim his reward, and to seize the magical stone, a valuable artifact. But approaching closer, the item was gone. He suspected he might have missed something. Suddenly, a chipmunk appeared before him. The creature extended its tiny hands toward Kim, as if expecting something. No path to the forest's edge appeared, and there was no exit from the dungeon either. Kim guessed the chipmunk was the final puzzle of the zone. It seemed like an unexpectedly tricky beast, so the hero decided to negotiate. He offered the chipmunk meat from a black bull, but the creature wasn't impressed. Then he tried offering the goblin's perfume, which also failed. Finally, he chose to give it something extremely valuable. Yet this came at a significant personal loss for Kim. The chipmunk then opened a window and proposed a deal. Upon confirming, the system announced the acquisition of the magical enhancement stone. The hidden zone of the unknown forest was now fully cleared. Consequently, the hero was transported to the second entrance of Seoul Station. Everything seemed changed. The observers tracking the players were nowhere in sight. At that moment, he felt the scorching heat pressing down on the streets. Glancing at his phone, Kim realized 3 whole months had slipped by. He decided to call immediately. Everyone had been worried sick about him. Turning his head, he spotted the chipmunk and wondered why it was there. It turned out to be a new toy of cans. Kim couldn't understand how an ordinary chipmunk could possess so many unique skills. The girl named it Darren. Strangely, Kim became the master of Darren. Yet, he realized he faced a critical choice. He had to choose a guardian. This was a pivotal moment, one that would shape the path of his game. On Selin's channel, such attention had never been gathered before. Kim received 5 offers. For a mid-level player, luck this extreme was unheard of. Even one guardian choosing them was rare. He had never even heard of anyone receiving 5 messages simultaneously. Kim was confident his talent was so extraordinary it had transformed an ordinary human into a prodigy. Selin asked which guardian Kim wished to contract. He knew all of them were exceptional. Choosing just one seemed impossible. Each proposal was sharp, calculated, and clever. Kim realized he could select only a single guardian from them all. In that moment, he sensed something strange. It was as if something invisible lingered in that space. So he focused his perception. Kim discovered an unknown observer had not sent him any messages. From the very beginning, this guardian had been watching him closely. Its special skill, the eye of the cold-blooded observer, had essentially become his perception. Kim also knew this unknown observer often operated beyond reason, bending logic to their favor. The Turtle Nest reward wasn't at the level of a mid-ranking administrator quest. Ordinary guardians usually set their sights on fame, making themselves widely known. The guardian could subtly convey intentions through secret channels. This allowed Kim to detect another hidden message among them all. From the start, he intended to choose that guardian. Kim signed a contract with the unknown observer. He decided to open the hidden shop on the 2nd floor of the tower. Yet the system announced his promotion to observer. Still, Kim couldn't fully grasp what this class entailed. An official had already been dispatched from the office to meet him. They had waited 3 long months for his arrival. The door only visible to Kim appeared immediately after completing the 2nd level of the Seoul Station dungeon. Kim realized it was a hidden zone, and entering it transported him to an unknown forest. Searching for the forest master to complete his task, he constantly felt a gnawing discomfort. Using every clue and his own insight, Kim gradually unraveled the true nature of the forest. In the end, he had triumphed over the Goblin Master. The deal he struck with the chipmunk that appeared out of nowhere had also turned out to be incredibly lucky. The only thing Kim couldn't wrap his head around was his observer class. It didn't even have basic attack or defense skills. By leveling up his perception and sharing skills at the right moment, the King of Fists could have delivered a one-hit kill. The problem was the leveling process. It could have taken 5 years. But Kim could handle it much faster. That gave the hero a strong feeling that he would succeed. The system announced the hidden identity of the unknown observer. The observer didn't want it known that he had signed a contract with Kim. Kim promised to play as best as he could. Suddenly, he noticed 7 missed calls from Shin on his phone. The girl informed him that the next day a players' assembly would take place. It was time for active moves from the Players Association. At that moment, Kim realized someone was outside his door. Opening it, he saw a man. It was Chol, the head of Sun Shin. Kim knew the name well. The man was the head of the HR department in the Players Association. Chol apologized for the late visit. Kim asked why Sun Shin needed him. The man explained that the leader highly valued Kim. The guild had been growing rapidly, backed by Sun Shin's support. Kim was also offered 200 million won, additional benefits, and a fast-track salary increase. This was a first and last offer of this scale, with no extra checks. They expected good news from the hero. Kim realized they were confident he would accept, but he knew this offer came from the company Songgi. There was no malicious intent, yet it felt humiliating to him. With the magic enhancement stone already in his hands, worth 10 billion in 3 years, it seemed trivial. Kim also thought the unknown observer would likely disapprove of such an offer, so he decided to play it his way. His team worried about him as well, and surprisingly, he found that comforting. The team members had also achieved a lot over the 3 months. That day, levels were being measured, and Shin and Soo had already received theirs. Since Kim refused the measurement, his level was F, just like Kan. He considered that high ranks were only for combat class players. The official assembly was about to start. Sun was also present. Kim realized Khan had helped him build rapport with everyone. Glancing at the clock, he knew it was time to start, but not everyone had arrived yet. Then his gaze landed on one person. This marked the starting point for the day's events. John had signed a contract with the brave Lion King and was searching for a target he could challenge. Kim had explained to the administrator the day before what could happen at the players' assembly. A conflict erupted between Taejeon and Guak. John intervened between the players. Kim knew this scene would be pure entertainment for the observers. The mid-level administrator, Percy, didn't like John picking on a player during a live stream. Percy tried to provoke the event further, planning to strike the boy. In that instant, Celine stepped into their conversation. She reminded them that no force could be used against a player. Percy bristled at her interference. Kim understood that once Celine intervened, resolving the conflict peacefully would be extremely difficult. Taejeon decided to escalate the confrontation with Kim. But Celine protected Kim, declaring him an exclusive Heaven-class player. She then suggested another team member who was a perfect fit. It was Shin, who was thrilled by the opportunity. Taejeon assumed Kim was hiding behind the girl, but Shin immediately pressed her sword to his neck. It was a defeat without a single blow. Yet the end only came with the opponent's death. The girl dispatched him swiftly and effortlessly. Kim had no doubt Shin would handle the task. Even at first place in skill level, he could track Shin's mana flow and movements. Kim also gained experience for the team. The experience boost surged by 80%. Now he understood the observer class far better. Gusun was also present. A professional coin thief, he hunted novices. He possessed a unique pocket-opening skill. His sights were set on Kim, the richest player. But in the end, Kim robbed Gusun before Gusun could rob him. His genius went unnoticed even after the theft. Typhoon always remembered the players and those who aided him. He thanked Shin for her protection. Kim enjoyed interacting with the boy. He realized Typhoon had the mage class. Kim was surprised the hero sensed this instantly. Kim suggested heading to the 12th floor for the assembly. The team managed to arrive on time. Typhoon was now their ally, marking the completion of the first stage. Next came the serious part, but everything would be interrupted by the sudden appearance of Gates. This was where Typhoon awakened. Kim decided to assist his awakening and gain something for himself. These mysterious gates appeared without explanation. A brutal place where over half the players had perished that day. To find clues to close the gates, 18 columns needed to be destroyed. A slow, intensifying wind tore players apart. Monsters appeared too, nearly impossible to hunt at their current level. Without knowledge of the strategy, Kim couldn't have predicted what awaited, but he had to be there to awaken Typhoon. He was confident his plan would succeed. Destroying the 7th column, The landscape was about to shift. Before them rose the central column. The active phase of the sweep had begun. It enhanced compatibility with wind and created synergy for movement. Kim could now save precious time. Celine had doubted him, betting he would fail. If he succeeded, she promised to open her mid-tier shop. Thus, the mid-tier shop was unlocked for him. But all item prices had spiked tenfold. So Darren secured more funds for Kim. The genius chipmunk had saved him. The massive expenses strained him, yet he decided to invest. Kim had seen the blue light barrier before. In the safe zone, he could finally work on it calmly. He decided to enhance the wind shoes. It became a blue-tier enhancement. Kim felt he had a natural talent for it. As Typhoon battled monsters, Komaki decided to help. Kim relied on the equipment set and narrowly avoided paralyzing poison. But according to his plan, Typhoon would remain unharmed. Kim warned the boy that the wind would blow again soon. The boy pledged loyalty to Kim until death. Kim assigned him a task. He had to retrieve the treasure cache. Kim lent him the wind shoes. Typhoon couldn't believe a rare tier item had been entrusted to him. Kim judged that the boy could wield it more efficiently. Typhoon couldn't understand why Kim was so generous. He asked what he was supposed to do. The wind current encircled the central column. Typhoon just had to ride it. One wrong move, and he could fall into a lethal gale. He was extraordinarily talented. He suspected monsters would appear near the central column. Looking up, they saw a bird with a human face from Korean mythology. Kim ordered the man to take it down. Sangu cleared the path for Typhoon. By then, 11 columns had been destroyed. An observer's role meant minimal intervention. But in unexpected circumstances, Kim was ready to step in. He swiftly defeated a huge-mouthed lizard. Typhoon completed his assigned task. Kim praised him for a job well done. The sacred gift cache began to radiate its power. The battlefield started to shift as the cache's influence spread across the land. A window appeared before each player, prompting a donation to the cache. Other players couldn't see who contributed what. Darren gifted more coins to the hero once again. Kim decided to donate 30,000 coins. The gift cache reached capacity. The rewards from the cache went to Kim. He gained a new skill, cognitive dissonance. The blue barrier promised additional support. The columns started vanishing one by one. Kim activated cognitive dissonance. It ensured no one could see who claimed the rewards. Kim took a calm moment to verify everything. The hero received the Divine Wind Body Tome. This wind class item greatly amplified stats and skills. A rare artifact capable of transforming someone into a unique genius. Kim knew he had struck incredible luck. He noticed something on Typhoon's back. A sin candle glimmered there. A random artifact, its appearance conditions unknown. A new zone would open once it extinguished. Players could be chosen to accompany him, but it was extremely risky. Extinguishing it too quickly could spike the difficulty. In that moment, the hero moved to put it out. Everyone saw a mysterious wind swirling around. Kim warned the team to prepare. They were heading through the next gate. He cautioned that someone was approaching. At the center, a massive tomb rose from the earth, and before them appeared a giant orc warrior. Had Kim failed to extinguish the flame in time, an army of archers and foot soldiers could have appeared. Shin noticed they had faced a similar opponent before. She asked if the hero still had the iron rod from the previous encounter. At the Cowboy Las Vegas request, a pause was activated. He proposed a new mission. The team couldn't immediately grasp what it meant. It was the first entrance to the Uplex dungeon, not yet officially opened. No one wanted to lose their coin gloves. Everyone's lives were at stake. Kim doubted they could complete this task with their current strength, so he entrusted the book to Typhoon. Everything was for their survival. The King of Las Vegas, a master gambler, set conditions teetering on the edge of failure. He might not have known that the hero had acquired the book. Kim decided to disrupt the balance with this advantage. He also planned to propose something to the king. A counteroffer to a guardian who deemed the player worthless was a direct path to the grave. Kim commanded Celine to transmit his will to the cowboy Las Vegas. The sister Kim knew that 2 archers and 1 warrior should appear, but the cowboy Las Vegas hadn't set clear mission parameters. So, the hero wanted to specify the hunting target using the item dropped by the orc warrior. It was a way to verify who he intended to sponsor in the future. He already had experience hunting the great orc warrior, along with proof of victory. The mission conditions were fulfilled. Not everyone appreciated this style of play, but the cowboy had to be satisfied that the hero held far better cards. However, ignoring the reactions of the other guardians wasn't an option. The boy Selin knew not all guardians were pleased with this method, so they decided to create content that would satisfy the majority of the guardians. The tomb clearance was about to begin, but the difficulty was sky high. The system reported that the orcs were becoming increasingly brutal. The team moved into action, following the plan. The battle began immediately. Shin and Su struck first. Next, Chal entered the fray. Kan considered him a key figure in this battle. She took on the orc archers with precision. Typhoon joined the fight, channeling his own power. Kan avoided direct hits using her platinum shield. Together, they handled the situation flawlessly. Typhoon felt as though an entirely new world had opened before him. He suspected that Kim might be a monarch class. Everything was going smoothly, but one small detail remained. Kim decided to fight the last orc alone. He had encountered numerous anomalies along the way, but chose to rely on conventional tactics. The level difference between them was 11. Kim decided to provoke the orc first. It worked, and the warrior charged aggressively. Intuition allowed him to calculate distance and speed instinctively. Kim aimed for the orc's vital points. The system reported the activation of the great orc warrior's unique skill, but the boy's spirit resisted. In his mind, he visualized the monster's next moves. The hero also activated his instant movement skill. He poured all his speed and weight into a single strike. But at the last moment, the monster landed a hit. Kan's assistance helped him get back on his feet. From the start, Kim had prepared to absorb 3 hits. He then began the climax of his plan. Typhoon and Chal fused their magic together. They channeled all their strength and energy to annihilate the monster. It was their first time combining power, but Kim was confident in their success. Finally, Shin and Su joined the fray to finish the orc. The system confirmed victory over the great orc warrior. The level 30 player clashed head-on with the level 41 orc warrior. Facing overwhelming odds, he received aid from his friends, pushing him toward victory. It was a performance that even the Guardians couldn't help but admire. Every player involved received rewards, and a total of 150,000 coins were distributed. This was a high-stakes mission where 3 Guardians combined their powers. The team members received boosts to their attributes. Kim obtained a secret reward, the spellbook of a high-rank orc. Suddenly, this Guardian, who had once shown mercy to monsters, now looked down on the boy with disdain. Together, they left the gates behind. Kim realized that the Lord of the Fields could do nothing, constrained by the opinions of others. A man in the area expressed admiration at the boy's return. The Shield Guild materialized immediately after the mission's completion. Kim hadn't seen the guild leader since clearing the gates. A small boy named Jin approached the hero. He was curious to see the person who had so enchanted his grandfather. Kim suspected the boy had been sent on purpose. It seemed the leader wanted to test Kim's abilities and had sent his grandson to observe. Kim resolved to live up to the man's expectations. He ordered his guards to force the hero to kneel immediately. Kim asked the boy to behave politely. He warned that showing respect could make him seem formidable. After that, Kim decided to leave. Gradually, everything became clear to the hero. One of the men stated that the players had no right to leave, as the player association intended to bring them all under control. The association planned an investigation into the appearance of new gates and the deaths of players. Kim guessed they just wanted to pressure them. Resisting them seemed pointless, but everyone appeared terrified. Shin noticed that the atmosphere was incredibly tense. Someone was deliberately creating this tension, but Kim couldn't figure out who. Celine also asked what the overall picture looked like. Dim explained that the head of the Sun faction would receive the message, and they would begin creating their steps. Jin being provoked was part of the plan, serving as bait. The bait would trigger a reaction, which in turn would create another bait. The goal was to force the Shield Guild to act. Kim warned that the show was beginning. The hero decided to increase their value and take control of the Shield Guild for himself. He suggested the team take a short break. Kim asked when the players had become subordinates of Choil. The man replied that they had no choice. All players were required to join the association. After such pressure, Kim had no desire to cooperate with Sun Xian, especially when impudent children told him to kneel. Jin tried again to assert his dominance over the boy, but the hero once again put him in his place. Then he stated that it was enough for the guild leader to understand his intentions. At that moment, John intervened in the conversation. His pride had been stung. Kim's Chol revealed that the association had simply wanted to gather some data. Kim couldn't fathom what would happen if they handed over any information. The boy believed it would be extremely advantageous for future games. He realized the association had come to clean up players and extract intel on innovations. Kim felt that true business partners wouldn't act this way. After Chol invited the hero to a fight, Celine pointed out that this conflict had nothing to do with the main scenario. Kim decided to accept the challenge. There was minimal justification for him not to act in his observer role. Chol chose to strike first. Kim noted that his opponent was moving at half speed. He could see all of Chol's movements. The system announced an additional vision function, eyes that could glimpse the future, predicting enemy attacks with perfect precision. The boy could see 1 second into the future. He explained that the essence of his class was observation. A leader gathered intel through the observer, directing team members toward the optimal path, maximizing team efficiency and unlocking players' true potential. Defeating his opponent, Kim displayed his full capabilities to everyone. His class was upgraded to Monarch, marking the end of the second stage. Yet at that moment someone addressed him. The brave King Lion and Jian could not surrender so easily. The Lord of the Fields also decided to act. Jian entered berserk mode, charging with monsters to attack the boy. Chol wanted to incinerate them, but the hero stopped him. This hunt was not theirs to claim. Police stepped in to protect the team. Kim warned them that conventional weapons would be useless against the monsters. He realized the special forces seemed to have been waiting for this moment. The police tried to hold the monsters back, preventing them from approaching. The guild had to take the initiative in eliminating the threat. But ordinary weapons were powerless, so reinforcements were required. Monsters attacked from all sides. Kim had one method to stop the monsters and save everyone. The guild Kim decided to make one of the members a hero. The man couldn't comprehend what was happening. The hero asked for 5 minutes to align his abilities to the optimal state. He instructed the man to attack the monsters alongside the guild, granting him the title of hero. The man activated his eyes of truth. It turned out he already possessed this unique skill. Kim realized the man had a special power. The eyes of truth did not affect him. All items and materials from the hunt became Kim's. Every player was to receive 100 million coins. Tao refused to accept the offer, but Kim was confident he could handle it. Because the shield would have no chance to escape that place. Kim announced that the hunt had officially begun. Tao realized Kim was a dangerous player, impossible to read, with abilities that defied reality. At that, Kim understood his plan had taken effect. With the current forces, defeating such orcs without losses would have been impossible. But the book changed everything. Even hybrid orcs and werewolves could not escape its influence. Kim unleashed the power of forced subjugation. Every strategy revolved around the book. His eyes of perception sensed an unusual energy. John wasn't just standing there. Something was happening with him. Kim decided to attack the man. Using instant teleportation, the hero dealt with him effortlessly. Meanwhile, a helicopter hovered over the player association's territory. Everything ended exactly as Kim had planned. The public assumed that the Shield Guild had defeated the monsters, so the team decided to leave everything to Sun Shin and departed from the scene. Outside, Kim felt that Typhoon wanted to discuss something with him. The boy mentioned that when they exited the gates, he had received a new notification. It stated that the Wind Temple dungeon could now be opened. Typhoon apologized for revealing this information late. Kim felt the boy wasn't obliged to report to him. Typhoon thanked him and pondered where to find the fox tail. Kim recalled that the Wind Temple dungeon had been notorious for being cleared solo by the boy in the past. Kim assumed it was meant for one person, but hadn't thought about the tail. Yet it had ended up in his possession. So the hero used it in the Valley of Fire. Kim explained that the leaves of the tail came from the six-tailed fox he had already defeated. In the past, the state had hidden the very existence of that monastery. Everything seemed strange to the boy. He felt that some serious mistake had occurred in the past. So, upon arriving home, Kim's sister immediately asked why he had gone to the players' gathering. She had seen the news about the sudden gates and monsters and was terrified for her brother. The news had reported everything immediately after the event concluded. Kim decided to have dinner first before discussing work. He also mentioned that a guest was expected to visit soon. The boy rose and headed for the door. Outside stood the police, suggesting that the hero accompany them. Chol could not understand who Kim truly was. After all, orcs of that kind were far from ordinary monsters, yet the boy had managed to handle them. Even his grandfather took an interest in the hero. Thus, the guild found a reason to accuse him of assault. If the boy refused, they intended to eliminate him. At that moment, Kim's lawyer entered the pre-trial room. He asked whether any arrangements had been made with his client. But to Kim, everything seemed painfully obvious. The boy inquired about Jean's condition. After all, it was because of him that the police had taken him. Everything had happened because of leniency. One of the guards had tried to seize control over his body. The only way to stop him was to strip him of consciousness. The lawyer couldn't grasp where the boy had gotten such precise information. Administrator Celine confirmed Kim's words, so the lawyer decided to speak with the hero alone. The real conversation began without the police hovering over them. Kim was the first to speak. Since Jian remained in a coma, there was no one to report the attack. The hero was unknown to the press, and all attention focused solely on the guild. Judging by how fast the police had arrived, Kim realized that powerful authorities were targeting him. This was someone who could control information and wield influence. The lawyer revealed he had come to remove the charges from the boy. But Kim couldn't figure out how the lawyer had known his location, so he decided to engage in the conversation and make the time useful. Kim explained that the guild leader had sent his grandson to him for no reason at all. The leader was merely curious to see how the hero would handle himself. Kim responded accordingly to this move. The hero couldn't quite understand the man's intentions. The outcome of this agreement also influenced the leader's opinion about the man. From that point, negotiations moved in the direction Kim desired. All attention went to the shield, while the players gained practical benefits. The man couldn't believe Kim was only 20 years old, having acquired so much information. Yet he couldn't understand why the hero had refused the fame and honors. Kim explained that the one who had contracted with him didn't want him drawing attention. The man promised to ensure Kim could return home safely. Kim realized that the guild leader's son was on his side. He also intended to demonstrate something to the other guild members to convince them to cooperate. Ben-Gil Sop would become a strong player, capable of competing with Shin. The hero decided to show him and the guild the massive difference in their skills. To dispel doubts about their cooperation, Kim proposed that L test him in PvP. The man accepted and quickly set a date for the test. The hero already had enough information about it. He decided to prepare properly, being someone who could change the course of the game. The boy met with Typhoon. Typhoon returned his wind shoes. The special skill could turn a battle in his favor. Typhoon warned that only a wind class could wear such shoes. Afterwards, Kim decided to check the other items he possessed. He had 4 pieces of equipment. Since his opponent was level 30, he could fully block one attack. Then he went to Shin to borrow her sword. Having earned the title of Heavenly Demon, she must have possessed some powerful artifact. She handed over the legendary sword, passed down to the heir of the Heavenly Demon. Kim hadn't expected her to have such an item. The next day, Kim headed to the player center for the battle. Usually, fights took place in designated arenas, but this time it would happen atop a rooftop. He knew that if players with raw physical strength fought inside, the building could collapse under the chaos. The boy realized the commanders didn't grasp the fundamentals of battle at all. Also present was the Golden Priest, Gonjin. A player named Ji asked why he chose to hold a closed duel. Kim explained he wanted to avoid unnecessary fame. Ji thought the boy would be crushed. She added that if Kim lost to a member of her guild, they'd celebrate it together that evening. Kim realized the girl could be his first real opponent. The eye of perception sensed the energy of seduction, so Kim activated the repelling gaze. The boy inquired what reward he would gain for winning the duel. Ji agreed to grant any wish he desired. Afterwards, Kim warned the guild leader that he disliked the girl's test. This meant he could cease cooperating with the guild. Kim hoped the duel would end fairly and honorably. Ben appeared before him. It was time to reveal the limitations of their world. Ben's primary weapon was a spear. Kim had no main weapon. The entire duel scenario had been meticulously prepared, and Kim adjusted it on the fly. The hero decided to initiate the match. He proposed a pact with his opponent. The boy declared he wouldn't move, making himself unable to dodge the first attack. L didn't understand what was happening. Kim resolved to stand his ground and wait for the strike. Ben felt utterly bewildered. Kim wanted to convince everyone he could defeat Ben with overwhelming superiority. So Ben struck first, yet he failed to cause the boy any pain. The effect of the equipment set allowed Kim to absorb the blow. The item's effectiveness and value shifted entirely depending on how it was wielded. L realized this would not be an ordinary duel. Kim thought that once the shield integrated the value of new moves into his consciousness, it would influence other players. At that moment, the guards glimpsed the image the boy had drawn. The next step, the hero decided, was to unleash the sword. He fully anticipated Ben's movements. Kim skillfully countered every attack. Ji was captivated by the boy's ability. She was certain that if Kim wished, he could annihilate them all. Ben claimed the victory was unfair, citing the equipment disparity. L rejected his argument. Kim's team lifted him onto the rooftop. They immediately realized the hero had won the duel. But L proposed a rematch. Kim announced a guild versus guild battle. The guards agreed to the proposal. Everyone moved into the designated zone. The teams consisted of 6 players against 6. The opposing side had been on edge ever since the hidden fragment was announced. Kim asked his team if they were ready for the fight, deciding to assign roles with precise strategy. Each player engaged their opponents with fluid skill. Every member carried experience from battles like this, honed over countless encounters. Kim was confident victory would belong to them. The elf unleashed her power against the main hero, but Kim countered effortlessly, like the calm eye of a storm. The opponents couldn't comprehend how he handled magic with such ease. The team deployed their forces, following a strategy analyzed by Han Sok. Yet the gap in skill was monumental. L recognized that Kim could see into the future. Thus, Sun inquired about how the battle unfolded. L was stunned by the hero's sheer strength and the intellect, far beyond what they had imagined. His analytical skills were unmatched, and Kim was recognized as the victor. Sun believed Kim had demonstrated mastery, claimed advantage, and chosen the path of ruling over the strong. Meanwhile, the team realized their victory was possible only because of Kim's guidance. Kim completed the hidden fragment and claimed his reward. The honorary title granted to the first conqueror of a new domain marked his triumph. Suddenly, Ji appeared before him. With the poisonous water in hand, Kim didn't understand why she had come. She extended a letter claiming it had been sent by the guild leader. Inside were 2 checks, each for 2 million coins. Ji, known for scandals with famous players, she carried a daring aura. Kim refused, maintaining his focus on the bigger picture. He also asked her to tell the guild leader that if a body was found in the northern region, it must be completely shrouded in black. Kan had a bad feeling about this girl. Kim warned his sister that they had 2 days to rest. After some time, the hero gathered the entire cafe team once again. That day, he proposed exploring the building opposite Uplex. They had the right of first entry. Soon, that location was expected to transform into a dungeon, so reconnaissance was critical. Everyone would be at risk, and Kim warned all through S.H.I.E.L.D. The next day, he planned to take the team on a journey. Kim instructed them to stock up on food and items capable of countering poisons. On Mewadu Island, a completely black, decayed corpse was discovered. At that, she informed him that Heck Jim was outside their house. Kim explained everything to the team. Together, they rushed toward the hero's house. Approaching, they saw a heavy police presence. Journalists and local residents had gathered as well. Kim ordered Sue to handle the reporters. The hero approached the corpse, determined to uncover any clue. He knew that the monster dragging people underground drained all life energy, causing the body to blacken. At that moment, an unknown creature lunged at a policeman right before his eyes. Shin immediately swung her sword, trying to halt the attack. Kim warned everyone to steer clear of the poison, his voice slicing through the tension. He decided their next move was to find the entrance to the gates. The team ventured into the forest, shadows stretching long and tense. Kan spotted something unusual and quickly reported it. A field of flowers, drenched in yellow blooms, hid the gates that had activated among the petals. A caterpillar lay motionless, eerily reminiscent of the one that appeared on Mewadu Island. Shin struck it with her sword, obliterating the creature in a single swing. Before the team, the gates to the centipede cave emerged like a shadowed portal. Insisted that entry had to be controlled. The gates must not open unchecked. They decided it was better to minimize surprises and summoned guild members to observe the unfolding scenario. Kim couldn't fathom why the cave gates had appeared at this exact spot. The hero decided to take one team member with him. Upon entering, Tim confessed his fear of insects. Kim warned him not to hesitate, knowing monsters could react to voice. A master of fire-type skills was needed for the cave clearance, which was why Tim was chosen. As they ventured deeper, they encountered piles of corpses, a grim warning etched in the shadows. Suddenly, Kim barely sensed the approach, the strike ghosting past unnoticed. Celine notified that the system had recognized the assailant. It was the Demon King, Il. Kim realized a single misstep at home could have been fatal, but Il noted that the hero possessed remarkable intelligence. Kim had long known this encounter was inevitable. Il was a being who walked the path of power and dominion. By piquing the monster's curiosity, Kim knew the price for this would be high. Yet the hero had prepared for this meeting long before it happened. Favored by many of the guards, the monster warned him not to be too trusting. It turned out Darren had stolen an item from the demon. Il cautioned Kim to give everything he had to survive within this domain. Afterward, Kim saw the monster vanish, yet the atmosphere had shifted ominously. He no longer sensed the centipedes, but behind him loomed something far greater. A monstrous predatory tree devoured the pearl centipedes with grotesque hunger. Kim realized that battle was unavoidable. He also knew he could not face this alone. Meanwhile, Tim searched frantically for Kim. He decided to use chimera oil to rescue his mentor. After the attack, a wall of intense fire erupted before him. Through the choking smoke, Tim spotted Kim. Together, they managed to defeat the monstrous tree. Tim understood that Kim had risked his life to pull it off. Yet even though the tree hunt ended successfully, the pearl centipede had not appeared. So, the team resolved to seek out the cleansing crystal next, the next step in their perilous journey. The system announced that an unknown observer had offered privileges to the hero, a mysterious gift wrapped in unseen power. The boy recalled the stolen item he had taken from the Demon King, a prize of audacious risk. He decided to investigate exactly what he had acquired. It was such a rare artifact's value could not even be measured in money. It was a treasure beyond reckoning. Kim finally understood the purpose behind the offered privileges. Celine questioned whether the location was appropriate for such a venture, but the hero knew the fusion stone had to be used, no matter the place. Not all items could merge. Compatibility was crucial. Accessories had the highest chance of success, so Kim chose a ring. Taking the ring, he decided to enhance it threefold, the stone pulsing with latent power. The system confirmed that Legolas's ring had been successfully amplified. The special ability could only be used once, but its utility was unmatched. Unlike before, when Kim felt powerless, now he was confident everything would succeed. He felt alien energy seep into his body, a tide of raw potential flowing through him. Tim was shocked, witnessing the sheer strength emanating from the hero. As a result of the successful fusion, the item's skill transformed into a player skill, an evolution of combat essence. The cleansing crystal was destroyed in the process. The gates were secured without a single casualty. The only regret among the heroes was that the pearl centipede had slipped through their grasp. Darren brought the boy the centipede pearl needed for the Yuplex dungeon. Preparations for Uplex were nearly complete. All necessary items had been gathered, with the rest handled by Il. Meanwhile, Sun decided they should seal Uplex and the modern department store. Following Kim's advice, this would bring them enormous profits. Immediately after clearing the cave, Kim revealed astonishing information. In 2 days, Iuplex was to transform into a dungeon. Kim warned that it would begin subtly, gas leaks, minor tremors, or swarms of ants as the first signs. Il convinced the guild leader that if the hero deceived them, they could influence his actions. This would enhance the company's image as one that prioritized public safety above all. So Sun chose to build a more trusting relationship with the hero. Sun observed that Il had grown rapidly since encountering Kim. Meanwhile, Kim knew there was only 1 day left before the dungeon emerged. The future could shift again, unpredictably. Kim didn't know the exact hour, but in his prophetic dream, everything had unfolded like this. Operations in the building had been halted. G noticed shield players approaching the building as well. Yet she was confident her team would handle the cleanup. Suddenly, Kim knew it would be a tough raid, but he had prepared meticulously. The system reported that no living humans were detected inside. The dungeon structure formed by absorbing living beings, putting city residents in imminent danger. Kim shouted that they had to enter first, urgency crackling in his voice. They moved. G